please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Although I stress that the public gallery will not feature in the live stream and the public speakers will only be filmed from behind where they are seated and their faces will not be visible. So can I just check on the basis of that advice whether anyone's got any concerns? No. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. I always include the next item for the benefit of members who are using the microphone system, but I now notice that we've gone a little upmarket and you've actually got a laminated card in front of you that will explain how to log on and how to use the microphone system. So I'll just assume that everybody is now comfortable with that. So thank you for that. And we'll now begin the formal agenda. Could I ask for apologies, please, Helen?
Chair, you have apologies from councillors Laura Jane Miller-Jones, Andy Neal and Don Waldron.
And could I have an indication if there are any substitutes, please? Councillor Taylor. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we need to turn our attention to the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of June 2025. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? Yeah, I couldn't find any corrections either. So could I have a proposer, Councillor Whittam, and the seconder, Councillor London? So unamended, proposed by Councillor Whittam and seconded by Councillor London. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the minutes, please?
Thank you. That's unanimous, and the minutes are accepted.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Right, item 4 is the declarations of interest, and members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable or non-registrable interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda, and that should be no later than when the item is reached and when appropriate to leave the meeting prior to discussion and voting on the item. So at this stage, do any members have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Mardley White.
Thank you, Chairman. I am currently parish chairman of Rougham and Rushbrook Parish Council, but I feel I can. So it's item 7, is it?
Yes.
But I feel I can keep an open mind on this, and I will take part in the debate and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mardley White. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Marmay White. From what you've said, and provided you have an open mind, I don't see that precludes you from taking part.
And Councillor David Smith, please.
Yes, not really a registrable interest, but just a matter of consistency, as I always do, just declare that the item 6 has been discussed at Haverhill Town Council. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And again, from what you've said, I don't think that precludes you from taking part today.
Thank you, Claire. Can I just ask you a question? With that fan going over there, is everyone still able to hear? Is that okay? No, the hearing. I suspect that might be the case. Can we turn that off, please? Yeah.
Thank you.
You might even have a permanent job, sir. Thank you for that. Yes, it is. Okay, well, in that case, then we turn our attention to item 5 on the agenda, which is Land East of Bury, and Sarah is the presenting case officer. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This application comes before the committee as a departure from the currently adopted development plan. The site is outside the settlement boundary for Stanton. A site visit took place on Monday. The application is for up to 220 dwellings, 40% of which would be affordable, and land for community uses with associated infrastructure. The proposal is in outline form with all matters reserved apart from means of access. Just a couple of updates for you. I'd like to draw your attention in particular to the late paper, which reports matters relating to public transport and the SAM contribution, and consequently updates the recommendation as well as amendments to a number of conditions. I have had a late email from Councillor Major received on the 4th of July, which is short, so I'm just going to read that out. Residents in Moreton Hall will be greatly worried that no major improvements are made to the A143. With hundreds of cars being added to the morning and evening rush, significant compensation should be made to Moreton Hall residents who will most likely bear the brunt of this new development that will add further strain to Otterwell Road. We call upon all committee members to use whatever powers they have in seeking adequate compensation for the residents of Moreton Hall who are suffering badly from years of new developments without any major road infrastructure improvements. I've also had other late representations from Sam Carlisle, Brian Brown, Rosemary Croft of 7 Dudding Walk and Sadie Bloomfield, who lives on Berry Lane. None of these comments raise any new matters for consideration, and these late representations will be available on the website. Okay, just moving on then to the site location plan, the site outlined in red here. The site sits just to the southwest of the village, adjacent to the A143, which runs along the western boundary. This is a constraints plan. The red line indicates the current settlement boundary for the village. The listed buildings are highlighted in pink, so the one over here is the closest, which was the former Rose and Crown pub, now converted to residential. We have public rights of way indicated in the pink dashed lines and the conservation area in the dotted red line. I'm just going to take you through some photos of the site. Members who were present on site on Monday will be familiar with these, and some of these are taken from other positions where we weren't able to view. But this is in the top corner from the site where we stopped on the A143, looking across the site. A view looking southeast across the site. A view along the western boundary looking south. And you can see the listed building just in the distance there with the thatched roof. A view further along, again looking south on the A143, and that's the listed building I was just referring to. A view looking back the other way, west along the western boundary, and you've got the Shell garage just there on the left. We're now on the other side of the site, looking across the southern boundary from the eastern side. A view looking north on the eastern side of the site. Members recall we parked here in front of this agricultural building on site on Monday. So this is on Berry Lane, and this is where the new emergency access point would come off. A view looking towards residents on Fordham's Close and the existing farmyard, which we walked through on the eastern side of the site. This is taken from the recreation ground from the southwest corner of the playing fields, and this is the boundary of the site here, demarked by the hedging. Again, a further view along the northern boundary of the site. Okay, this is the submitted indicative master plan for the site. We have the new access off the A143 and the emergency access off Berry Lane. We have landscaping buffers along the western and southern boundaries and a 1.8 metre acoustic earth bund along the western boundary, which will mitigate noise impacts from the road. We also have a number of SUDs, play areas, and the area in pink is land to be transferred to the parish council. So just to set out the structure for this presentation, we will look at the policies and principles, the habitats regulations assessment, highways matters, sustainable connections, ecology and biodiversity, landscape impacts, section 106, and a summary and planning balance. So turning firstly to policy and principles, as I said, this site is outside the settlement boundary, and the principle of development is covered in paragraphs 64 to 74 of the papers. Support can be offered in principle given the significant weight the emerging plan now has and its allocation policy AP41, which allocates the site for around 200 homes, and the proposal is up to 220 dwellings, and this is considered to fall within the policy requirement. So a habitats regulation assessment has been carried out under the Conservation of Habitats and Species regulations. The site is within the recreational zone of influence of the Breckland SPA and the Breckland Special Area of Conservation. This is covered in paragraphs 59 to 61 and 160 to 171 of your papers. Emerging Policy SP8 sets the framework for mitigation measures designed to protect these sites across the district. It requires that new development, which would result in net increase in dwellings and is likely to increase recreational pressure on any European site for nature conservation, will be required to demonstrate that adequate measures are put in place to avoid or mitigate potential adverse effects. The LPA completed an appropriate assessment which concluded no adverse effects on the integrity of the Breckland SPA and SAC, and subject to conditions and securing a SAM contribution, as set out in the report, the proposal is acceptable in this regard. Moving now to probably one of the most important aspects of the proposal, which we do know in detail, given that means of access is a detail at this outline stage. I've split up the access plan into several sections just so that I could zoom in and hopefully you can see the detail of each of these. So the site, the road itself, the A143 along the western boundary, will be widened along the site frontage, and this will accommodate a new 2 metre wide footpath, as indicated by the darker grey. There'll be a footpath connection into the site in the northwest corner. There's a widened central right turn provided into the Shell garage, which should prevent hold-ups of traffic turning into the garage, and a new uncontrolled crossing with a central refuge just here. So slightly further down, again, you can see the new footpath extends further south and it connects into Rose and Crown Court. A new bus stop lay-by with shelter and new stop with bus cage on the northbound carriageway. So this is the bus lay-by here. And you can't, it's probably quite difficult to see, but the orangey yellow markings indicates the position of the bus cage on the carriageway and where the new bus stop would be. On the site visit, it was noted that the A143 is a no-stopping clearway. Whilst clearways generally prohibit stopping, buses are allowed to stop at designated bus stop clearways for the purposes of picking up and dropping off passengers. The creation of the new bus stop will be subject to a traffic regulation order. There'll also be a widened central right turn into Rose and Crown Court, similar to that which is proposed for the Shell garage. And a light controlled pedestrian crossing will form part of the new traffic light junction. Concern was raised at the site visit about how residents will turn right out of Rose and Crown Court. Residents will continue to give way and egress when the lights are green within gaps in their traffic, as they do now. So just a zoomed in part of where the new junction is going to go in, which is traffic light controlled with a pedestrian crossing. So the traffic lights will be where this bold black line is here on the southern bound carriageway, and obviously here from waiting traffic within the site. This provides improved safety and pedestrian accessibility when compared to the previous scheme. The traffic lights will be wholly demand-led and only called when required, so when pedestrians or development traffic demands. This maintains the priority for the A143 and minimises overall delays to through traffic. The Transport Technical Note advises that the modelling shows that a traffic signal-controlled site access junction can accommodate the forecast traffic demand, which has been extended to the end of the local plan period for robustness. And then the last section of the improvements on the A143, we just have some new vehicular activated signage and gateway features. Turning now to the emergency access on Berry Lane. We have new street lighting and signage along Berry Lane. We have a 3.7 metre wide emergency access with lockable bollards, which will prevent vehicular access. These will be unlocked by the emergency services when needed through the use of a universal skeleton key or card. Berry Lane is also proposed to be widened to 4.8 metres, and the trees within the visibility displays will need to be removed and compensated for within the site, and new street lighting and signage will be required. And finally, the last of the improvements relates to the southern roundabout at Ixworth. So just for context, the plan here, you've got Ixworth Village here, the bypass on this side. So this is the northern roundabout. So it's this southern roundabout that these drawings relate to. A detailed assessment of the northern and southern Ixworth roundabouts is set out within the submitted transport assessment. Surveys observed that queues extended back from the southern Ixworth roundabout along the bypass and onto the circulating carriageway of the northern roundabout, consequently blocking southbound traffic joining the northern roundabout, causing a knock-on effect of queuing on Berry Road. The provision of junction improvements to the southern roundabout will remove the exit blocking back issue and, as a result, improve the performance of the northern roundabout. The precise details of the design of this roundabout improvements will be considered through a road safety audit. A query was raised on site in relation to what access we can secure at this stage and what will come forward at reserved matters stage. So I just thought it would be useful to outline that the Development Management Procedure Order is what defines access, and that is the accessibility to and within the site for vehicles, cycles and pedestrians in terms of the positioning and treatment of access and circulation routes and how these fit into the surrounding access network. So for this application, only means of access is to be considered. In this case, it is the main vehicular access into the site from Berry Road and the emergency access off Berry Lane. The remaining access details would come forward at the reserved matters stage as required under Condition 2. Condition 23, as revised in the late paper, relates to the provision of green and blue infrastructure, and this requires the details of access points onto the recreation ground to the north, the northwest corner, the southwest corner onto the new footpath connection, and the southeast corner onto Berry Lane to come forward with the reserved matters submission. So finally, just to highlight, paragraph 116 of the MPPF sets quite a high bar. It states development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. We have had a lot of public representations regarding concerns about highway safety and traffic congestion, particularly along the A143 where the junction is proposed. The transport assessment and updated technical notes submitted alongside the application in accordance with DM45 have supported the application. County Highways accept the findings presented and do not object to the application on highways grounds subject to conditions. Access onto the A143 was a key consideration of the allocation throughout the local plan process. It's important to note that the Transport Mitigation Report, which was undertaken as background evidence informing the West Suffolk local plan, sets out possible physical mitigation measures that Stanton and Ixbeth developments could deliver. This gave us certainty that the allocation could be delivered with the access onto the A143. So turning now to sustainable connections, we do have a plan on the left here, which is an indicative land use and access parameter plan submitted with the application. This indicates some, but not all of the connections to the wider site. The plan on the right shows the public right-of-way to the south of the site, which is just here, which is along here. This is restricted byway 6, and also the plan shows a permissive path which runs through a belt of trees to the south of the cricket club. The County Rights of Way team have requested a link from the southwest corner of the site to connect to restricted byway 6. So that would come along here. The Section 106 will secure the necessary funds for the order making and works. From the emergency access point, it's just 400 metres along Berry Lane to the pub and other services within the village, so it's in close walking distance. Okay, moving on to ecology and biodiversity. We do have a duty under Section 40 of the NERC Act to have regard in the exercise of their functions to the purposes of conserving and enhancing the biodiversity to further the general biodiversity objective. Previous survey work and conclusions in relation to great crested newts, hazel dormice, invertebrates, hedgehogs and brown hare are considered still valid, but further work is required in relation to skylarks, bats and reptiles to better understand the impact of the proposals on these species. How any impacts can be avoided or mitigated. The information provided with the application gives the Council sufficient comfort that the application can be supported, with further details coming forward at reserved matters stage. Conditions will secure a construction and environmental management plan, ecological surveys, biodiversity enhancement strategy, lighting design for biodiversity and landscape, and an ecological management plan. So turning now to landscape impacts, members will have noted from the site visit that this is really quite an exposed site, highly visible from the south and west in the wider landscape. Policy AP41 requires strategic landscaping along the new boundary to the south with the countryside and to the west adjacent to the A143, as well as retention and enhancement of existing species-rich hedgerows, providing appropriate buffers. A landscape and visual impact assessment was provided in support of the application. This acknowledges that moderate adverse effects on the character of the site, impacts will be mitigated through the detailed landscaping scheme, which will come forward at the reserved matters stage. In terms of the Section 106 package, this is set out within your late papers. The applicant has agreed a package of Section 106 contributions required to make the development acceptable in planning terms. It is considered that these are adequate to meet the needs of the development, including the necessary infrastructure, and is still compliant as set out in the report. Just one figure to note, which is wrong. The public right-of-way figure should read £12,228 as per their comments provided on the 14th of March and as set out in paragraph 25 of the main report. Turning now to the summary and planning balance. As I've advised, the development is technically a departure as it is on land currently designated as countryside in the existing local plan. Section 38(6) of the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act requires the applications are determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. There are two important material considerations that indicate otherwise in this case, and these are, firstly, and most importantly, the advanced stage of the emerging local plan and the receipt of the inspector's report confirming the plan is now sound means that significant weight can be attached to the emerging plan to enable support to be offered to this development in principle. It's also important to note that we can't currently demonstrate a 5-year land supply. This means that the NPPF's tilted balance applies and that planning permission should in any event be granted unless relevant policies in the NPPF provide a strong reason for refusal or otherwise where the adverse effects of doing so will significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Noting all the matters in favour of development, the application is recommended for approval with conditions and subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement as set out within the amended recommendation within the late paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. We now turn to the registered speakers. And we have Councillor Ben Lord, who's here on behalf of Ixworth Parish Council. And you're registered as an objector. Thank you, Ben. Then we've got Councillor Greg, is it Meadwell? Meadwell, and you are here as Vice Chairman of Stanton Parish Council in the Parish Council slot. Then we've got Councillor Jim Thorndike, who's a member of the committee, and he is the ward member for the site in question. And then Alex Clark Bloor-Holmes, the applicant. I understand we've sorted out you're going to do the 3 minutes. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Well, look, in that order then, Ben, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Good morning, members. It's slightly unusual for one parish council to be representing against a significant sized development in a neighbouring parish, but it is with good reason that we do so. The finer details of what's proposed deals with the impacts to the immediate vicinity of where development is sought, and to an extent this is understandable. However, there is a reason why this application has taken almost 6 years to arrive here. It is clearly riddled with nuances that seem perhaps insurmountable to overcome. On balance, our objection is not focused on the extent of housing proposed, but rather the cumulative impact on infrastructure. Just 15 months ago, we sat here with our objections towards a monstrous-sized commercial development application at the other end of Stanton. Whilst this proposal is for something significantly smaller in size as well as style, the reasons given then are mirrored now. For instance, the quantity of vehicles that will arrive and depart from this development will see a greater than 50% proportion headed south along the A143 towards Ixworth. Mitigations to our northern roundabout are needed beyond what's proposed. This roundabout currently meets no modern-day highway design standards, but interestingly also has proposed mitigations from 2 live planning applications in Ixworth. So at the end, which one actually improves the situation? In reality, nothing meaningful is improved if we simply allow sticking plasters to be attached to long-term, chronically recognised highways infrastructure issues that are exacerbated by the continuation of developments that are unleashed on our locality. Beyond this roundabout lies a circular footpath on 2 ends of Crown Lane, where pedestrians must take their lives into their hands by crossing 3 lanes of 60-mile-per-hour traffic. An increase in traffic numbers will lead to the unequivocal risk to pedestrians being naturally increased, yet nothing is proposed in this application to provide a contribution towards a safe crossing that the emerging West Suffolk local plan gives reference to. Naturally, there are limits to how far mitigations are delivered, and having seen remarks made by the member for Morton Hall that they expect to see compensation for their locality, I would have thought the proximity Ixworth has to this would ensure we get a greater consideration of mitigation than that of a suburb of Bury St Edmunds. Added to the equation of infrastructure impacts is accessibility to GP surgery services in this locality that is already overstretched. With 220 houses proposed here and 375 in Ixworth, that's almost 600 houses generating added population for GPs to serve. How are they to do this when there is no proper locus galvanised to properly address the glaringly obvious requirement that is a new rural health centre, properly fit for purpose and for the long-term future, rather than meaningless sums of money requested that in real terms do little to improve these vital services that are already at saturation point? While seeing this refused would be welcomed, in reality we realise it's probably unlikely. Therefore, if the committee does not resolve to refuse this, we call upon you to consider the issues for Ixworth and apply conditions to mitigate this, rather than just view the impacts of this parochially on where the development is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben. Right. Greg, it's your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, a less prepared commentary than my colleague, but equally, we were firstly as a parish concerned that in the publication produced by Bloor, our agreement to their development was taken out of context in the page of concerns that the parish have. These concerns are, as we've already mentioned, the A143 and access to it, the introduction of traffic lights and a further 2 ghost lanes to the 9 that already exist on the 143 is just unacceptable. The ghost lanes widen the 143, speeding is a problem. Whilst cars and lorries slow down for the SIDS, they actually speed up between them. Has anyone actually ever stood on a refuge island with lorries going past you at 30 miles an hour? It's not a pleasant experience. I'd urge you to reconsider that. I'd actually encourage you to consider putting in zebra crossings at the existing refuges. There are school children that cross that road at the peak times. We'd also like you to consider extending the existing 30 mile an hour zone and 40 mile an hour zone, perhaps to where the 60 mile an hour starts. This will slow traffic on the bends that already exist. I wouldn't like to see any changes there. Can we have some decent highways planning? And when I say decent highways planning, can we avoid the chaos and debacle at Sicklesmore through Stanton when this development eventually happens? We want to avoid rat runs through the local villages, avoiding the 143. Can we try and tie it up with the proposed application that will be coming in for Shepherd's Grove and the Link Road? If work's being done to the 143, let's get it all done in one go. NHS, my colleague here has already mentioned about it. At Stanton, it's difficult to get an appointment within 2 weeks already. They are at saturation point. We also have significant issues with parking within the village using the surgery. There's insufficient resource as it stands.
Greg, I'm very sorry, Greg. Can you finish up in one sentence, please?
Yes, I can. Yep. We'd like the buses to be reviewed as well. We have sufficient bus stops already in the village that are less than 400 metres away from the development.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Greg. Right. Councillor Jim Thorndike, please. You've got 3 minutes.
Doing it on myself. Thank you, Chair. Put this together in rather a hurry, I'm afraid. Some 6 years in the pipeline, I'm still hearing around Stanton the same major issues which we're hearing in 2020. Although various aspects of the scheme have changed, none of the issues have been resolved, not one. Now at a very late stage, traffic light scheme has been introduced on the junction. Only since April. Nothing there before about traffic lights. The area around the village doctor's surgery is a parking nightmare, as those on the site visit will have noticed. It's a problem that is going to get worse if you put another 220 homes in the village. Most local practices have at least 40 spaces. Stanton at best count has 6. So the problem there is a nightmare, as Greg has already said. Money is allocated on the Section 106 deal for the surgery, but that is to increase the floor space. Does nothing for the parking. The A143 is already very busy with hold-ups at peak times, and it's difficult to see how the planned access will do anything to reduce queuing that already exists at every junction not just that one. And although there is a bus pull-off southbound, in the opposite direction, buses will be stopping in the carriageway. I was going to mention a bit about the clearway, but I won't bother now after it's already been done. Again, the development in Ixworth will cause major problems for the 143 users from Stanton, because those developments will have right-of-way onto the roundabout, and the 143 coming from Yarmouth, the main arterial road coming through, will have to give way. Primary school on Upthorpe Road is another parking disaster made worse by this being the only access for HGV traffic to the west of the industrial estate. More cars blocking the road will not help. Although Stanton will grow in time, before any more development takes place, it desperately needs its infrastructure issues resolved before it comes to a complete standstill, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndike. Right, the applicant, Alex, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Alex Clark, and I'm the Design Technical Director at Bloor Homes Easton. As has been outlined, this is an outline application for a residential scheme that could provide up to 220 homes. It's been recommended for approval by your officers, and as set out in your officer's report, the site is a housing allocation AP41 within the emerging West Suffolk local plan. The local plan is nearing its conclusion, and we understand this is likely to be confirmed by the council next week. So congratulations to the council and the policy team for what was a thorough and professional process. Therefore, as advised by your officers, I am pleased to confirm that the application before you is in accordance with these emerging policies and has been supported by your planning policy team as being fully compliant and in accordance with the local plan. Today, we're asking the planning committee to confirm this. This should in turn go some way to helping the much needed housing growth for the district as well against the council's current 5-year land supply position following the Reserve Matters application. Bloor, as a national house builder, would look to deliver swiftly on the site that we now own in our usual manner, on which our positive reputation is built. This is an application has been identified as taken almost 6 years to reach this committee and was submitted to West Suffolk back in 2019, pre-COVID. Detailed pre-application discussions with both the district, county officers, ward members and Stanton Parish Council took place prior to this submission. Despite changes in personnel, positive discussions have continued throughout this period as the scheme before you today has continued to be refined as the policies have been introduced and developed through the local plan as well as the application. A design code has been prepared and submitted with the application, which has helped scope the application's development scheme and is now subject to approval prior to the Reserved Matters submission. There is also a number of considerable benefits that have been run through already to the scheme which sits before you today, which include a commitment to 40% of the homes being affordable, and all the homes across the site will meet the National Described Space standards. A certain number of bungalows will also be provided. Various new public open spaces will be introduced along with landscape buffers, 2 leap play areas, a dogs off a lead park and increased footpath connections, as well as an acceptable level of green and blue infrastructure being provided around 40%. 2 new bus stops will be provided along with other highways improvements such as the widening of Berry Lane to include a 2-metre wide footpath as well as an agreed and acceptable access to the site. There will be over £2 million in financial contributions towards education. Electric vehicle charging points will be provided to every home. Land and a potential of a commuted sum is also being provided for the parish council for community facilities, which has been discussed at length and has been welcomed openly. So in conclusion, the proposals you see before you this morning have been developed through extensive discussions with officers, members, Stanton Parish Council and the local community. Bloor Homes are committed to bringing forward high-quality, sustainable housing schemes which start with positive engagement with the local community.
Alex, you've also gone well over your 3 minutes. Could you give me one sentence?
Absolutely, sorry, sir. On that basis, I would therefore respectfully request that the members endorse their officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
you to all the speakers. Well, in anticipation of this, of course, we've got with us Peter, who joins us when we've got a planning application from Suffolk County Council with the technical expertise to support the committee's decision-making process. So welcome, Peter. But please ask all your questions through our planning officer, Sarah, and she will bring in Peter as when she sees it's necessary to do so. So, over to the committee. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention right at the very beginning, this screen here to my left doesn't work. It's stuck in it's stuck in the up position. My apologies. Right. Councillor Ball, please.
Just me, thank you. And I've remembered, can you hear me? Is that working?
Yeah, we can.
My main concerns about this application are the road safety. As a user of the 143 and having lived in Stanton for using the road for about 40 years, I know it very well. And I've got 3 issues. I'm concerned how many cars the Ghost Junction will hold for turning right onto the development. The Ixworth roundabout, I don't quite understand. It's a distance from the development, and it seems to be the southern roundabout that is having the changes to it, whereas as a user of the road, it is the northern roundabout, the where everything stacks up going towards Bury, and always has done. It stacks up almost back to Stanton itself in the morning. And so I'd like to understand how the changes at the bottom will improve the use at the top. And finally, we are talking about, I think it was para 116 of the MPPF, about mitigation for cumulative impact. And you've looked at the Ixworth end, but we have the B1 treble 1 accessing a T-junction, and there's no mention of any mitigation for that. It's much closer, and it has access from no end of villages, that is their only route, and that stacks up incredibly every morning, and this is only going to make it worse. You're putting traffic lights into the application site, and you have exactly the same problem on the B111, so I'm not sure. There seem to be 2 standards there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all say, when full council meets next week, and possibly approve the local plan, that will then give us a 5-year land supply. Yes, thank you. I find that a slight sort of anomaly that we bring that up at this stage, when actually things will be clearer after next week. Can we just look at the entrance and exit for the site? Can I look at that plan? So there's only one entrance and exit to this site of the A143, so that anyone taking a sick child or a child to the primary school or an older person to the doctors has to come out onto the A143, turn right, and then wait at the next junction on the A143 to turn right into the Stanton main part of the village. So they're doing a loop. Am I right, Sarah? Yes. So, I mean, that is, in my view, unsatisfactory, because, as we all know, the A143 is so crowded, and to have to do that little loop every morning or afternoon to take children to school or to visit the doctor or to go to the co-op shop, because we know, however much we ask people to cycle or to walk, they prefer to use the cars. So I really do find that a very extraordinary way that we should be encouraging people to access a village by going out onto a main road and then back into the village and then back onto the main road and back into their development. But there we go. I also have a query about the cumulative effect, which you've heard me talk about before on the A143. This particularly concerns the Bunbury Arms Junction further down. I know that we can't require developments to resolve existing problems, but neither should they actually contribute to them. And if I could read some wording from 2019, when we were discussing developments in Thurston, and we're talking about the A143 Bury Road with the Thurston Road junction C691. This junction links Thurston to the A143. Queues currently occur on the Thurston Road approaching the A143 at peak times. The proposed mitigation is to introduce right-hand turn lanes with traffic signals to control the junction. My question is, this was written in 2019, and the Suffolk County Council letter concludes that junction modelling indicates that the proposed traffic signal option will increase capacity, although the junction will operate close to capacity in 2021. So my question to Mr Bradfield is, have these traffic lights ever been introduced? Are they due to be introduced? And will this development of 200 odd houses in Stanton contribute to the ongoing problems further down the road, particularly at the Bunbury Arms, which we know is a particularly dangerous turning, and several people have had very severe accidents and some deaths have occurred there. So is this development going to contribute to problems on the A143, or are you saying that the 200 houses here and the 300 next coming in Ixworth will not contribute to these problems, and the little bit of tinkering at a roundabout will solve these problems? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Melmay White. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think, given the fact we've got 220 houses here, it's beholden on us to do sort of 220 times more scrutiny than we would for a single housing development. I'm going to talk about a number of different things here, so I apologise for the length of this. And for some of them, it assumes that the developer is a bad faith actor. And I just want to put right at the front that I am not saying that I believe that this developer would do the things that I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that we are not allowed to take previous behaviour of developers into consideration, so it is beholden upon us to assume the worst, and that is what I'm doing, and that is not a representation on this developer. First of all, the developer promised over £100,000 to the parish council originally for improvements to the play area. That has now been taken away and is going to be looked at as an on-site contribution for play areas. I think this is very important, that it's not enforceable for us to be able to make a developer do something that they've said that they're going to do in the pre-app phases. We had exactly the same thing in Exning, where we were promised a new village building. They might as well promise £1 million and a giraffe. It's not enforceable, and therefore we can't do anything about it. And I would say that any parish council that's listening now, please take that in consideration for future developments. I'm going to move to the S106, which is how we fund the development of things, processes and services based on the fact that there's going to be more people using them. There's a fundamental problem in the way that we do our S106, and I'll explain it in terms of the library service here. We've got 47,000 and a bit going towards the library service. Naively, you might think that that means that your library service then gets £47,000 more money over the next couple of years. That's not what happens. What happens is Suffolk County Council then reduces the core funding for the library service by £47,000 and uses this to make it up to that minimum level again, thereby releasing £47,000 to use in other areas. It's effectively just resting in the library service before it gets used elsewhere. I think that the NPPF is very clear that we have to get these funds of money for the services, and I am concerned that they don't actually result in extra services, and I'm wondering whether I can direct our officers to figure out if we can somehow tighten that up to make sure that if extra money is being given for a service, that service actually gets extra funding. The NPPF in paragraph 131 talks about the importance of communication with the community. This is an incredibly complex document. There's over 500 documents online, and I struggle to read it all. Heaven knows anyone that's just interested in the local community would be struggling to understand exactly what's promised, exactly what's going to be built, and how it's going to be built. We have as condition 25...
Councillor London, can I just... I do apologise for the interruption, because I know you were very passionate about these items, but can you bring your comments back to the application itself?
I am on this one.
Okay.
As part of the Householder Information Pack, which is condition 25, we are producing information for the residents. I was wondering if it would be possible to include a clear English crystal mark version of what's going on here within that condition 25 Householder Information Pack, so that they can understand exactly what is being said in this document in a clear English format. I'm going to finish by talking about oh, no, I'm not. Sorry, I've got two more. Condition 33, which talks about paths being built before a house is occupied, which seems very reasonable, that you need to create a path to the binder layer at least. I am aware, again, from the Exning site, that that only pertains to paths on site. We had, in Exning, a situation where parents with buggies were having to push their children onto the road to get around construction work and then back onto a pavement. So I would like to bolster condition 33 to make sure that those pedestrian footpaths are clear all the way to the primary school and all the way to the amenities in Stanton at the time that the house is occupied, not at some point in the future. Finally, with regards to the section 273 for the vehicular access, I have to admit I've done a very deep dive on this, looking at the annual average daily traffic for it. I looked into the transport assessment, table 2.9.1, gives us approximately 2,166 northbound, approximately the same, southbound, and the TRIX data, which basically is the modelling of where things are happening and where people are going, gives us around about 1,000 journeys per day coming in and out of the site. It is worth noting that that TRIX data is based on a 2011 survey of how people operate in West Suffolk, which is a 14-year-old survey. That means that we have over 5,000 journeys making their way through that roundabout, through that junction. If you look at the design layout of the junction in CD 123, which is the paperwork which defines how officers are supposed to design junctions, we've got about 14,000 capacity, which is really good. They're designing in that capacity. But one of the main things that I've heard from people is, well, why don't they just stick in a big roundabout? That's going to be so much easier. And a big roundabout, the design limit is actually 13k. In fact, we could put in a small roundabout at only 8,000 journeys. And for the vast majority of people, that is going to allow traffic to flow quicker. It's also going to significantly impact the poor people who live on the small road that's the other side. And I know that the officers have mentioned that they're going to be able to turn right. But with that weight of traffic at peak times when people are going to and from work, you're not going to be able to turn right because there will always be at least 10 cars present. And you can't turn right unless somebody lets you out if there's more than 3 cars waiting at that traffic light. So I'm really, really concerned about the design of this junction, and I would really like to get into the weeds about exactly why it's been designed this way and why we haven't been able to go for what seems naively possibly to be a much better solution, which is also the solution which is to the north and south of Stanton, which is just put in a big roundabout. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll leave the weeds for a moment because I've got Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. At some stage, a roundabout was considered, but it was turned down because it meant building part of it on the other side of the road and there wasn't the space, or I don't know, but it got wiped out. I must say, Mr. Chairman, I'm disappointed at this thing that's been sent round to all members of the committee by Bloors. They highlight one particular paragraph from the Parish Council comments and they leave the entirety of the rest of the A4 page that was raising concerns, etc. And they just cherry-pick the bit they want, but I think that's a pattern we've got. If I can go back in history a bit, the Planning Policy Department of this council, when this was submitted, raised issues about the plot concerned, and their final comment is Conclusion, considering all of the above, in accordance with paragraph 12 of the NPPF at the time, where a planning application conflicts with an up-to-date development plan, permission should not usually be granted. Now, I don't understand why the application wasn't thrown out at that stage. They should have done that. All of the pluses that laws are coming up with are what they have generated since that date. Before then, it doesn't. And the other comment that the planning policy people made was a quick look at Bloor website reveals the same form of housing illustrated at section 4 currently being developed at Hawthorne Grove near Warrington. And it's just blanket. We get housing of a pattern that they decide we're going to get, which probably matches several other developments across the countryside. Enough of that. Right, the doctor's surgery thing, there is, I'm not sure whether this is the latest figure, 145,300 allocated to provide another 41.14 metres of floor space. That is extra space within the business. It does nothing at all for the car park other than generate a lot more traffic. Something needs to be resolved there before any development takes place in Stanton, because it is something that's not going to get, either the doctor's surgery gets moved to a more realistic site, or somebody comes up with a miracle package for parking. I don't know. The other thing that worries me is one that somebody else hit on, is some disappearing money. Way back, Stanton Parish Council in their wisdom decided they were going to have a public meeting to discuss this. Bloors were invited. They declined to attend. Instead, they sent a flyer around the village. Probably Mr. Clark doesn't recognise it, but they did. And on the back of that, it has got provision of, no, let's have the right bit, significant local contributions through Section 103 agreements, total over 2.5 million, including 250 to 300,000 towards the community village hall extension or a new community social space. Can I ask where that has disappeared to? Because all we have at the moment, it appears, is a piece of land which is to be offered to the parish council. I don't think they've actually taken it up yet. I don't think they've actually had a formal offer yet of a piece of land and nothing else. We've taken all of the funding that was promised in the early stages of this development has disappeared. And the reason why Stanton will be very sensitive to that is because the previous application we had in the village for 100 houses actually had 97k allocated to the village for their play facilities and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, that one went to appeal, and in the appeal period, the government changed the system, so the developer there was able to turn around and say, well, we don't have to do it anymore. So Stanton lost 97k. They are a bit sensitive to jiggery-pokery going on with this money. I could mention Calcoms and the contact I've had with them. They're a firm that works on councillors, local councillors, and they are employed by Bloor Homes. I've been threatened by 2 of them that if I vote against this, and nobody knows which way I'm voting yet because I haven't decided, they will tell all the locals that I'm the responsible for them losing all their money. I don't take kindly to that. But the figure mentioned there was 300,000 for a new community changing facility or expansion to the village hall, etc., etc. That is all reinforced on a statement we had from Bloor Homes at one stage, which I referred to as the carrot pickers list. But again, it comes up with a 170 square metre community changing facility with social space, kitchen, veranda. This was the first time it had actually come up as a space, as a development being provided, rather than just the space. Novel. And the other quick bit I wish to pick on, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is the 143 junction That, as far as I can tell from Cannons, who were the consultants on highways, suddenly came up on the 21st of March as the first sign there is of anything relating to traffic lights. 5 years plus after we started development, we're changing the major access to accommodate traffic lights. But we have already somewhere in the past ruled out roundabouts. I think that'll do for now, Mr. Chairman. Oh yeah, one quick thing. Could somebody tell me where the cricket club is that was mentioned earlier at the end of the green place? I'm not too sure, but the last cricket facility in Stanton, I think, disappeared about 42 years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. I've now got a couple of members indicate, Councillor David Smith and Councillor Hood, but I just would like a moment's reflection on what Councillor Thorndyke has actually said. So just give us a second. Councillor, I'm just going to get our legal advisor, our solicitor, to just come back on one or two things that came out of your press. Sorry? No. You are a valuable member of the committee, and we don't want you to leave with your, or as Councillor Glossop at the moment. But I think that was the reason for the slight adjournment, was just to get some clarity. Okay. Just give Claire a moment. She's just drafting something. Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to be very careful about this then. So we can, but the debate can't continue until you're back, or whoever else is back, in all fairness. And I would suggest you're just going to have to go out this door and come back in this door to avoid any potential.
Can you go separately?
Yeah.
A bit much to ask them to go separately, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay, no problem.
Are you happy?
Gives you a moment.
Should we ask?
It was Councillor Smith before you, but as you suggested, you wish to raise a point of order. It might help in terms of the representation from Claire.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to raise a point of order in light of the allegation that we've just heard from the previous councillor, which is potentially a police matter, and I believe we should have an adjournment in order for us to have proper legal advice, because I would be quite surprised if we were able to continue in light of the statement that we've just heard. So I'm asking for an adjournment. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you very much. Okay, Claire, over to you. And it is relevant to the point you raised that we'd already picked that one up, actually, to be fair. So.
Yes, so the adjournment that we just had was in order to discuss the comments raised by Councillor Thorndyke. So what I want to say is that any comments relating to the third party's behaviour is not material to this debate, and I would ask members to disregard those comments made by Councillor Thorndyke in that regard. And can I also ask members to focus on the application before them and the planning merits of this application as the debate continues? Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Hood, I mean, we had picked it up, in all fairness.
Appreciate that, but having heard an allegation of that nature, and thank you for the adjournment, I would have thought that we should, in my view, defer this matter, because that's a very serious allegation that we've heard, which I would have thought is potentially a police matter, which I think is material. Thank you.
I'm in discussion with our legal advisor, and I agree that it's a serious matter, but it is one that is wholly separate to our consideration of the planning application. So with clear direction from our legal officer that any allegations that have been made within this room are not material to the discussions about this application. If there are other separate matters, they would be dealt with in an entirely separate forum. They have no impact on members' consideration today. So with that clear advice from our legal officer to members in terms of how they proceed with their debate and consideration of this application, I don't believe there is a need to defer further. I think we can continue a debate focusing on the application and the planning merits thereof.
Yes, I always know how very strongly, because of your legal background, how you feel on these matters. But I, as chairman, I'd like to continue with the debate. Thank you. So we're going to go to Councillor David Smith, having basically the last member representation before officers respond to the questions that have been raised so far. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you. And I'll be, thankfully, I'll be brief, I hope. Anyway. So coming from the other extreme of the district here, it sometimes helps to be apart from where the heat of the battle is, if it likes, so you can be a bit more objective. In fact, it was a very nice 60-mile round trip on Monday morning to visit the site. I think we can, hopefully most of us can agree that homes in the countryside are a priority for us. We need to find places for our younger families to be able to live and stay in the village where they were born and grew up. Happy that there's 40% affordable. I would like to see the rented portion a bit higher. 67% seems a bit low. Also worried that it says preferred social housing. I would like to see that more written in stone, that it is social housing rather than preferred. The other thing is, if we agree, obviously we need the housing, then if not here, where? I mean, any development along the A143 is going to add traffic. It is a busy road, as we've seen. Maybe the junction that's proposed will actually act as a calming measure, slow the traffic down. That may even have an impact on traffic further down the road by splitting that traffic up and reducing any hold-ups at the next junctions. Problems with the infrastructure is not restricted to Stanton. It's in all our towns and villages. Unfortunately, it's the way that villages and towns evolve. They evolve piecemeal, and there's not always a set-out plan how these things are going to look at the end of the day. So I'm torn between this, but yeah, I think sometimes it does help to look from the outside. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis-Smith. Right, I'm sure we've got some time now to devote to questions and responses. So over to officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I can bring Peter in first on the highways matters raised by Councillor Ball, the 3 points about the ghost right junctions, the roundabout, and the junction on the B111, 111. Is that okay, Peter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, committee. The Ghost Island right turn lane that is being provided or proposed, that capacity, of course, will vary depending on what sort of length of vehicle is in the queue, but I would imagine it'll be about 5 to 6 cars that are able to queue up before the stop line in that lane. The Stanton Road B11 junction that was mentioned by Councillor Ball, that is a point of congestion, but I don't think it is related to this development. I don't think it would have been appropriate for this development to try and find mitigation to that problem. That is an ongoing existing highway constraint. I think they were the main 2 points, but was there a third one? I didn't get in my notes.
The other question, I think, related to the roundabout, and it was in what way the improvements to the southern roundabout provided extra capacity on the northern roundabout.
Am I working? Yep. The constraint at the roundabout on that southern arm of the southern roundabout is getting traffic through that manoeuvre. The work that's being proposed on the southern flare of that exit arm of the A143 roundabout there will, I think, make a difference to the speed that vehicles are able to complete the roundabout exit. That, in turn, hopefully will enable more cars to join the roundabout and make that manoeuvre. So it's an improvement that is being offered by the developer to mitigate the increased number of vehicles on the road. We think the improvement is achievable and will have some beneficial impact, and therefore we think it should be included. The northern roundabout, and I can understand that there would be, I think, some logical understanding that the northern roundabout would be the one that this particular development maybe should be like trying to mitigate first. The bottom line is that there are other developments coming through in Exworth and Stanton, or certainly in Exworth, and those developments will be looking to mitigate congestion at the northern roundabout. The idea being that between the developments that are occurring in the area, both of the roundabouts are looked at.
Press you all.
I take your point about the northern roundabout, but when the application came through for the Ickworth planning, they were adamant that they would not address the roundabout, that they would put in a ghost junction. So I'm not sure that that might be a nice idea, but that would ever happen. And to be honest, from personal experience, there isn't huge congestion on that southern roundabout. It flows very well. There are, other areas where there is huge congestion. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. This is to continue. Yeah.
Turning to the points raised by Councillor Marmay-White, again, these were highways matters in relation to the Bunbury Arms junction and whether the traffic lights will contribute to problems on the A143. And again, perhaps I can pass to Peter to respond. Thank you.
One of the points that Councillor Marmay-White raised was disappointment in the fact that there's just a singular point of vehicular access into the development and that is from the main A143. There is, of course, an emergency vehicular access from the back of the development, so the single access is in relation to residential and public movement. I think one response that the Highway Authority would make to that is that the design that comes to us for review is the design that comes to us for review. The Highway Authority are not designers trying to set out how many axes there should be or where they should be. We assess the development that is in front of us. We acknowledge that the Bunbury Arms junction is a problem. I know there is ongoing work to try and improve the safety at that junction and hopefully to improve its capacity also. There are other developments that will come forward through the local plan in that vicinity. We will be seeking improvements and mitigation to those existing problems. In my opinion, it wouldn't be reasonable to anticipate that the development that we are reviewing today should be held responsible for trying to mitigate those existing highway problems at the Bunbury Arms. The amount of additional highway movement that this development will generate, I don't think is going to make any difference to the safety record at that junction.
Just to add as well, because I know that Councillor Marmay-White, part of your concern was about that single point of access, and Peter's picked up on it in terms of a highway in the back point of view. The emerging allocation does make it very clear that the point of access would be to that road. And I don't know, Sarah, if we're able to return to the site constraints plan. I think it's just a geographical kind of reality of that site and the way in which it relates to the highway. To the east, that access is a quiet lane, so it wouldn't be appropriate to bring vehicular traffic from this site out to the east. So I do acknowledge and understand what you're saying in terms of people's behaviour and wanting to use the car, but the allocation as set out in the emerging plan does accept that that is how this site will be accessed, and that is why, as part of the proposals, we're seeking to try and ensure the best sustainable links as possible in order that there are other alternatives should people want to use them.
Councillor Malmo White, you've actually indicated you wish to speak again. So you can come back. Thank you.
I mean, am I the only person who thinks it's very odd that a 220 house development has traffic lights onto the A143, but a 2,000 village with a population of over 2,000 has no traffic lights at all? I mean, I understand it's historical, but we're providing what we call a safe entrance for 200 people who are going to be living in Stanton, but the majority of the Stanton population have to cope with coming in and out on the A143 with just a little central, I don't know what you call it now, refuge in the middle. I just find it bizarre. And the reason why I bring up the Bunbury Arms, of course, is because this is within the catchment area of Thurston Upper School. So children from this development will be travelling to Thurston for school. So it's not a question just looking at that one development, which I know is all we're allowed to do. But, we do have to think a little bit further ahead. And as I say, we've been waiting on the Bunbury Arms, and that was written in 2019, and here we are 2025, and nothing's been done. So it doesn't give us great comfort for any other minor improvements or even what we would like, bigger improvements to be made. But thank you for listening to me.
Yes, Councillor Malmo White, thank you for those comments. Yeah, I've noted, Councillor Glossop, you want to speak, but we're still going through the questions for the. No, it's okay. No, don't worry. You're very patient, Councillor. Well, there's several now. Okay, back to you, officers.
Thank you, Chair. So moving to queries raised by Councillor London. We have secured a library contribution in the 106, and I think you were concerned about existing funding being removed as a result of that top-up coming in from the 106 payment. I don't think we can do anything about that. How their existing funding arrangements work is outside of this control through the planning process. All we can do is secure that contribution towards extra library services. Moving on to condition 25, you requested a strengthening of the condition really to ensure that there is a kind of a plain English version of that householder information pack. That is certainly something we would want to ensure is provided, given who these information packs will be going to, and that's something that we do as a matter of course and have done with other sites and other information packs. So I don't think there's a need to amend the condition in any way, and we will certainly ensure that it is in a plain English version for general public to understand when they receive them. Condition 33.
It was about making sure that they're not to bind a course, but I think condition 33 relates to the on-site files, whereas what council has come and done with I thought that was off-site. So do you might need to clarify that again?
Councillor London, I wonder if you could just clarify about condition 33. I think you were referring perhaps about off-site paths, whereas the condition 33 relates specifically to roads and footpaths within the development.
So, condition 33 currently just talks about on-site paths. Now, something that I have seen in other developments, in my home village of Exning, with a development where we had exactly the same condition on site, was that because there was no condition to connect the on-site paths to the wider pedestrian network, even with people living on site, we had dozens of occupied houses and parents having to walk into busy 60-mile-an-hour roads to get their children and their push prams to the primary school, because there was no condition saying that the on-site paths had to connect to the off-site paths. And I'm wondering whether condition 33 is the appropriate place to condition that you should be able to. It's one of those sort of things. I don't know how we put it into planning consideration, but if you've got a house, social housing, you've got mothers and fathers with children, they need to be able to get to the primary school. and they might not have a vehicular access, they might not have a car, so we need to make sure that there is a pedestrian access to those amenities from the point that they are on site. We can't expect them to walk in the road, as was expected in Exning.
Thank you, Councillor London.
Thank you, Councillor London. I think we understand what you mean, and it's that connection between on-site and the existing network. So I think we can include some wording to make sure that is explicit. Is that okay?
There was a question, I think, about 106 money to take care of Parish Council, but perhaps you could use that as an opportunity to flag this.
Okay. The queries, the points made by Councillor Thorndyke in terms of previous monies offered to the parish to improve the village hall and facilities. Obviously, I wasn't party to those discussions that have happened in the past. All we can require through the Section 106 and application is a policy compliance scheme. There is an opportunity under, so it would come under the play and open space contribution, which is in the 106 already, but within the public open space standards appendix to the emerging local plan, there is a built facilities contribution that can be secured as part of that. And the trigger for that is 200 homes. So if a reserve matters application was to come forward for 200 or more homes, I think it's reasonable to say that we can secure a contribution for built facilities, and that would need to be further discussed with the applicant, but it would fall under that public open space umbrella that's already within the 106.
It can be discussed in the drafting context.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, so in terms of how that is in, Sarah's presented the heads of terms to you, and perhaps it's not wholly clear when it just says public open space, but the way that our public open space standards work is they do include built facilities. So, but that the wording of that will be more explicit in any 106. At the moment, you've just got those heads of terms, but in an event where there were more than 200 dwellings, then that would be one of the relevant contributions that would be sought in relation to this development. I think that's all we've got.
Yeah.
For those members who posed some testing questions to officers, have the officers responded? I've got you down. Yeah, Councillor Thorndyke, is there something missing from your original? Yes. Yeah. Well, I think we would default to your local knowledge, Jill, and there isn't a cricket pitch. There isn't one, is there?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Could we have the slides back up, please? It's the green access one as well.
Yeah. Apologies. The reference to the cricket club came from the Public Rights of Way team in their reference to the permissive path that runs through this woodland strip here. So the fact that it's referenced as a cricket ground is not, pertinent to our discussions. The important thing is it's a permissive path that can be used as part of the sustainable connections to the development.
Yes, Councillor Thorndyke?
It's mentioned in the report in a couple of places, this cricket ground. It is relevant to the application because it's in the paper, and if we can't say where it is, then we need to be asking questions of the highways people. Roads of way people, sorry.
I think Penny wants to respond to that, Councillor Thorndyke.
And I apologise for that erroneous mentioning of the cricket ground. I think the really important things for members to understand, and I think that is clear in Sarah's comments and then in the presentation, and particularly if you'll go to your the Sustainable Connections Plan, where it is, we've got it on a map based, so we are aware of where it is. It's where Sarah indicated it is that permissive path. It's the location of the path itself rather than the detail of the adjoining land uses, which is important for the consideration, I think, for members.
Councillor Thorndyke.
Sorry, Chairman, the bit of land we're talking about with the permissive path on it, that tree belt was put in by Sir Kenneth Carlyle many moons ago because he wanted to develop the piece of land between that and the village. Unfortunately, that never came off. The tree belt is still there. He has allowed a permissive path through the middle. There is no cricket ground. There is nothing else there other than a path through the trees.
Officers have accepted that, Councillor Thorndyke, and if there's any correction required, then we will correct it. So, well, there will be a correction required because there isn't a cricket ground. So your point is well made. You were in the queue to speak. Was there anything else you wanted to raise whilst you've got the microphone in the on position?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why I was tarred and feathered earlier, because what I mentioned is all on file. It's all on the website, with the exception of the latest Blaw's bit of stuff and the Village Hall local meeting. Everything else is on the website. But if I can, from the website, I have the Canon report number 8, which tells me that at the meeting on the 21st of March, Suffolk County Council asked whether a signal-controlled junction could be considered in place. Now, that appears to be the County Council asked Blaw's whether they could comply. Previously not been a consideration as maintaining highway capacity and minimising delays on the primary corridor was the main concern. The re-evaluation by SEC considered traffic signal control junction is considered by them to provide a betterment in terms of highway safety and pedestrian accessibility. So putting the lights in is basically on that statement, which is on the website by Canon, by Suffolk County Council, says that they are now going to throw away traffic flow but have safety at the junction. That does not seem compatible with making progress with the main trunk road from Yarmouth through to wherever. We're now reducing the traffic flow on it. Sorry, it just doesn't add up, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. I'm sorry you felt tarred and feathered. That wasn't my intention. It was out of concern for your comments about threats, which Councillor Hood picked up. Are members that contributed to the first round of questioning content?
Do you want us to answer Councillor Thorndyke's question or keep that for the next batch?
Keep that for the next batch. Are you coming back on the point you raised earlier? Because I want to get to the point where we draw a line under section 1. Let's put it that way.
As I said before, I did quite a deep dive into the traffic transport assessment for the area, which I will not go over again. I think there are serious concerns for Rose and Crown Court and how they are going to come out. I would like our transport officer to come back on exactly how that's going to be done during the peak hours. And we've also looked at as I said quickly, the annual average daily traffic that's expected for the site, which is tremendously underneath the design the design requirements for a traffic light controlled junction such as we have, and it is factual to say that the traffic we are experiencing is closer to that we would expect for a standard roundabout such as the ones to the north and south of the village. And so I would like a commensurately detailed explanation of how we have ended up at this point where we're not discussing even a compact roundabout on the site.
Understood. I'd like to draw a line, if I could, under the first set of questions. I've repeated myself. Is that something, through Sarah, that you and Peter could respond to?
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, if I can pass to Peter. So we've got the query from Jim around the meeting we had with Canon and the introduction of the traffic light junction, which hadn't been tabled or discussed before. And then from Councillor London, the concern about the Rose and Crown Court development, people turning right out of there, particularly during peak hours when traffic lights are being in use. And also whether the volume of traffic would it be reasonable to require a roundabout at that point, rather than traffic lights, which would help with the flow of the traffic. Thank you.
I think the scheme in front of us will improve matters for the residents of the Rose and Crown. I think that the red light signal there will provide them with a much safer opportunity to join that flow than exists at the moment. That's my opinion. The signal control matter arose from Section 278 meetings that the Highway Authority had with the applicant to review in detail the specifications of the junction that was being proposed. And at that point, we were not satisfied that what was in front of us at that time, which was just a priority junction, would permit safe departure from the site at peak hours. Now, an alternative to a signalised junction, as you have said, would be a roundabout. It is not evident that there's the space in the highway to deliver a roundabout of a size that would be necessary to achieve the deflection angles that we would be looking for. The other matter with the roundabout is that unless the arms of the roundabout were signalised, its improvements are really aimed at getting as many vehicles through a location as possible. But in this case, we have the residents to think about. So we've got the residents from the estate that may well want to be able to cross onto the northern flow of the A143 to get on the bus. And having a signalised junction there will make life much, much easier and safer. And those residents will include the kids getting off the school buses and so on. So the Highway Authority are satisfied that the geometry and that the movement numbers of vehicles and that the future demand for safe pedestrian and cycle movement, that the signalised junction is an appropriate and optimum scheme. Now, we acknowledge that when you've got a red light flow on the A143, that is going to stop the traffic. That is on purpose. It is necessary to stop the traffic to enable the movements to occur safely. The increase in congestion that will occur when those red lights are on, we think is modest. That when the light goes green, the traffic will start flowing again, and by the time they get round to the other junctions that we have discussed, I don't think it will have had much impact overall on the flow.
Thank you, Peter. Turn myself off. I have used this expression before, but it's just a minute programme. I think Claire corrected our deviation earlier, and all I would like to say to subsequent questions from members is, can we not do any repetition? Please. All right, so we now move formally into section 2 of the committee debate. So, Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got some questions, please, and I'll try not to repeat what already has been said, please. On page 26, the Highway Authority have given a statement, and at the end of it, it says a number of conditions are recommended to secure, and one of them says a road safety audit. So I'm unsure whether that road safety audit has been done, because obviously we're going to have an access out onto the A143. So I'd like that answered, and perhaps I have missed that road safety audit. I don't know. On Monday, I went on the site visit, and we walked on the pavement along the A143, and I found it extremely frightening. When the lorries came along, I felt as if I was going to be sucked into the road. So I'm concerned that obviously we need this housing, and I welcome that, especially if they're going to build bungalows, but we're going to have more people walking along that road, and that worries me. A young mother came with a child in a buggy and a little boy walking by the side of her, and she crossed that road, and my heart was in my mouth. I just thought it was so awful. And so this isn't going to get better, it's going to get worse. And I know I'm being told that I must only look at what is in front of me today, but we have to think about the accumulative what's going to happen in the future. So I am worried about that, because there will be nowhere where we can have a dual carriageway, because we'll be building right up to the road. So I worry about that. I also worry about having a bus stop in the carriageway, because people have got to cross the road from this new development to get on the bus. We haven't discussed either, but you may have looked at it, Highways Authority. This is a holiday route to Great Yarmouth, so I can imagine on a Friday afternoon and a Sunday evening, I don't know, I worry about this, and I know you're going to tell me I can only look at this as it is now, but we're certainly not looking into the future. So I really, really do worry about this whole thing. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor Hood, please. Oh, no, you've just turned yourself off.
I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier, but I've got one question about the section 106. Is it possible to improve that? Because it seems to me not to be adequate, and the comments from the parish council make it very clear that it's not adequate. Our site visit made it very clear. I'm not sure if you're going to say no more can be requested from the developer, but I think it ill behooves us to approve developments, no matter that we may be positive about the housing, if the doctor's contribution is not significant enough so that people can't park. We went through a lot of those things. The school parking isn't there. So that's the first question. Can we improve the section 106? Because it doesn't seem adequate. And if we can, we ought to defer and do that. Number two, can you confirm whether we are or are not allowed to comment on the cumulative impact that has been mentioned by the objectors and people here? There is a cumulative impact. Are we directed to ignore it? And then my third point is that why are we, it may be that you will tell me that because this is only this is not the final application, but given that we've heard that the developer offered financial contributions to the parish council that have now disappeared, and that I myself, along with probably every member of the committee, received a communication from Bloor Homes this morning that materially misrepresented the position of the parish council. That, I think, is something that needs to be resolved if we have a developer sending out in writing a misrepresentation of the view of the parish council, basically representing to us that the parish council are happy with this, and yet we've heard from the local representative, and looking at the papers, the parish council's concerns don't seem to have been addressed. So I'm actually not happy. I can see that we could be happy if we defer the planning officer and the developer meet again, and there are improvements made and matters outstanding addressed. So that's my preferred approach at this moment.
Are you proposing deferral of this application? And to clarify...
I would be happy to, yes.
Yeah, and the reasons, as you have just articulated, is there anything else that you can think that should be...
Well, I think we could, all of those of us who went on the site visit could see that the traffic is unbelievably dangerous, and what my colleague has said, I felt too. It was horrifying to see that mum with her couple of kids crossing the road, and it was very uncomfortable to be standing on the pavement, such as it was, while these monumental pantechnicons and other traffic just whizzed by. I mean, I just think we can do better. So I'm not against the application per se at the moment, but I am concerned that we should defer. So I'll propose that so that we can improve the various things I've highlighted. Thank you.
Okay. No, Penny's just needs a further clarification, but that will probably come. Now, look, I had Councillor Ball on my list to speak. Sorry, I guess what I'm saying is I now need a second, and you, Councillor Ball, you were next on my list to speak anyway. So if you can add any further clarity to the reason for deferral.
I would be happy to second it. I really am concerned about the safety aspects on that road. And just to comment, really, I think there's been a lot of concentration, obviously, on the access for the actual application site and the garage as well, the petrol garage. But on that road, in that very, very short section, cheek by jowl, is a motorbike garage, a car sales garage. There's a commercial yard which has big HGVs going into it, as well as the individual houses. And I just am concerned on the safety, and that is my reason. I would like to see a better highways resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Now, Councillor Whittam and Councillor Ball both indicated. I think you were trying to second it, but have you got anything to add to the officers? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Whittam first.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was going to second the proposal of deferment. I'm not so convinced that the problems of access and ingress to that site can be resolved satisfactorily. I know our esteemed highways gentleman is saying that, in his opinion, it is going to be okay. I stood there alongside many members here, and it was well outside of peak time, and it was frightening. And that's currently without adding. I mean, you've got 220 houses. You can say that's probably in the average of around 400 to 500 extra vehicles coming in and out of that site. And they don't just do it once a day. You got mum in and out for playgroups and schools, and I just see it a disaster that we should be attempting to resolve prior to. So deferment would be my option, and have these things looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm also really concerned about the travel assessment. It was done 6 years ago. We've had COVID since then. We've had massive upheaval in the way that we live our lives. A lot of people have vastly different sort of transport requirements, and not just people, but having things delivered to your house. There's probably about a 1 to 3% increase in the traffic on the road, given national averages. And then we've also got the assumed generated demand coming out of there, which is the TRIGS data. That was based on survey data from 2011, from 14 years ago. That's the baseline data. People didn't have Amazon deliveries 14 years ago. We really do live our lives in a different way. So I would like to see this based on a much more current figures. And if we are deferring, I think now would be a good time to ask if it's possible. Can we get another transport assessment of the 143, and secondly, is it possible to do a TRIGS assessment based on more recent survey data than 2011? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. I'm just going to. Councillor Mel May White, before we go back to officers.
Could I just clarify what the legal implications and for non-determination will be if we defer this, and particularly if we're requesting further traffic studies and things?
Okay, I think Penny will now come back on that and clarify where officers believe the reasons for deferral are at the moment.
So, so there was a few things I wanted to clarify, actually, if I may, so just bear with me. There was some mention earlier in the discussion that Councillor Hood made reference to the 106 and improving the 106. You have a list of heads of terms with you at the moment. The 106 itself is yet to be completed and written and negotiated, so there isn't necessarily a requirement to defer an application for officers to continue to work on the detail of that 106. As long as the recommendation allows that. Clearly, we can only require contributions within the system where we believe them to be still compliant. But as we have explained in relation to things like built facilities, there is some more nuance that would be developed as part of those negotiations. So that in itself, I don't see I don't think it's necessary to defer in order for those negotiations to proceed if that was something that was concerning members. And I just wanted to put your concerns to one side in relation to that. Turning to the deferment and the reasons for it. So what I'm hearing from the debate and what I've made some notes on, and I'll turn to your query as well, Councillor Maid-May White. It's in relation to highways. I think a bit more detail came out from Councillor London in terms of understanding more of the traffic information. You had some concerns in relation to the date of the travel assessment. Although I understand there have been much more recently updated technical notes which are acceptable to the Highway Authority. So it is important for members just to bear that in mind. That kind of brings me on, I suppose, to the next question, which is in relation to Councillor Maid-May White and what the implications would be in terms of the determination of this application should members continue and defer the application. I suppose there are two things that could happen. We have an agreed extension of time which takes us to a point, but it does not at this point go to the next planning committee. So at the point at which that expires, an applicant would be entitled to, should they wish, apply for non-determination by appeal, at which point that decision would be removed from us as a local authority and it would go to the planning inspectorate. That's not to say that in any kind of loaded manner. That is just a factual representation of the position in terms of how this application could be determined. And I suppose the importance then of making it clear what information you're seeking by way of this deferment, because the applicant will want to understand what it is that they could do to bring back to you in another committee's time that would change the situation, bearing in mind that they have done an up-to-date technical transport note and they have a scheme that the Highways Authority is happy with. So that's just sort of the factual context of where we are. We can continue with answering members' questions and obviously the debate can continue, but hopefully that just provides some clarity in terms of the likely ways in which this application could proceed thereafter today.
Thank you for that, Penny. There are no more, I've got no one in the queue to speak again.
We've got some questions to come back on.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Glossop raised the query about the road safety audit. That hasn't been undertaken yet, and that is covered under condition 29 within the papers. So that will happen and that is conditioned accordingly. Councillor Hood, I wonder if you could just clarify, you made reference to cumulative impact. Is that in relation to highways?
In relation to, well, the doctor's surgeries, the school parking, at the moment, it's been made very clear to us that there isn't enough parking anyway for the doctor's surgery, for the school, and then we're adding 200 or maybe 200 plus houses. So it just seems counterintuitive that we would approve something that's going to make an impossible situation now even worse. So if you could guide us, that would be helpful.
So I think that's, I I see what you mean by cumulative, but it's cumulative in terms of the impact this development has on an existing situation as opposed to the cumulative impact of various different developments, because this is the allocation in Stanton. I mean, we have allocated the site here, so we are anticipating that this is the site that will deliver the growth for Stanton, and that is going to understandably have a knock-on impact on those facilities. The contributions have been secured and they would be spent in those locations. Now, I appreciate that the health contribution that they have asked for specifies the increased size of the surgery. Now, how they manage those estates in the longer term and how they best adapt them to suit the needs of that growing community is kind of outside of our control as planners. We can secure the amounts that they request and tell us is necessary. That's the comments we've had in particular from the NHS in what they need as a financial contribution. There may be other things they need to do in terms of managing their estates in the longer term, but clearly when you have a village with existing facilities, they are to some degree constrained by the natural site itself. Whether or not then that puts a limit on being able to provide additional growth in those settlements, that's a really difficult balance, because potentially you would end up with some of those villages where you wouldn't see the provision of additional housing. So I do understand that it's a delicate balance, but certainly in terms of planning policy, we felt that this level of growth can be accommodated within Stanton, and we've then sought advice from the relevant consultees on what the necessary financial contributions are to help improve those facilities. So that's really the limits to which we can take it, I think, within determining the application.
I just come back and very quickly say, so we did hear by the first objector about the cumulative impact on infrastructure, and you're basically saying we need to disregard the first speaker's cumulative impact communication and just there's nothing we can do about it, I suppose.
I don't think I would say that you're disregarding it. We are aware that there is an impact on those facilities. We have considered that. We've consulted with the appropriate people. Our view is, both in the policy side of things and the application side of things, that the balance is right and we're happy to support it. You don't have to disregard the impacts that this development will have. We've judged those things and in the balance found the package in front of us to be acceptable. So be clear, I'm not telling you to disregard the impacts on the community infrastructure. We perhaps have a different view in terms of how that is balanced and how they have mitigated for those impacts to some of the speakers today.
Thank you, Penny. Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that the main things with this appear to be infrastructure, not the development itself. So I think that shows that we're not against housing. But infrastructure is going to be a real pain, and I'd just like to flag up the Shepherd's Grove Industrial Estate current master plan that's out there. That is not going to make a blind bit of difference to the traffic flowing past the front of this estate. It just means that the heavy goods that are travelling through the village at the moment will be coming out further along the A143 and proceeding along the A143 as they would anyway, wherever they were starting from. But yeah, doctor surgery, highways, what we've heard this morning is what we need clarity on and we need resolving, I think, before members are happy with this application.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you. Councillor Glossop mentioned the road safety audit, and I've looked at condition 29 and I'm very confused by it. Doesn't take much. It says that the highway element of the off-site mitigation works shall not commence until the road safety audit process has been carried out in accordance with practice, and that. I don't really understand that. We're being asked to make a decision on recommendations that the proposed highways changes will be fine, and then it says until they start those works, they won't know whether they're safe or not. So I really, that is very confusing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. Councillor Glossop, your near neighbour.
Yeah. Yes, this is a little bit confusing. We're the planning committee. We've been asked to look at this outline application. We have concerns about the A143, the junction out of this development onto the A143, the problem with having a bus stop in the middle of a carriageway. We have many concerns about the safety, but we are being told that we can't really shouldn't really be deferring this because the Highways Authority are saying that this is all acceptable. So what is the point of letting it come to us? Because whatever we say really doesn't seem to have any impact on the fact that most of this committee are worried about the A143 and the safety of all of the residents of Stanton. So I'm a little bit confused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Would it be possible to bring up the junction image again, please, on the big screen? Thank you very much. Oh, there we are. So, and I'm sorry to bring this back up, but it's a very specific question coming back on what Peter said. Turning west, that is turning sort of down the page towards the junction out of Rosencrown Court. You can see the junction there and you can see the traffic light there. So we're going to have to cross one carriageway to get to the other carriageway. It's probably going to take about a minute for those lights to cycle. And in that minute's time, we're saying that it's probably only about 2 cars waiting for there is going to block somebody coming out of that road. So the only time that they're going to be able to come out of that road is when there is less than 2 cars a minute on the A143. And I don't think that it is reasonable to assume that that is what the conditions on the road is going to be like anywhere near peak time or even average time. We were there in the middle of the afternoon and there was very definitely more than 2 cars per minute there. So how on earth are the people that live in those existing houses going to be able to safely execute an exit from their driveway across the road carriageway and then turn right when there will be waiting traffic at the traffic light for the majority of the day? And I'm sorry to come very close on this, but I haven't been able to come up with a reasonable answer to how they're going to do that. I also have a couple of other things. Condition 33, officers thankfully have said they're going to amend the wording. Would it be possible to have that amended wording in full, please? Condition 32, 23, which details the well-needed access points, and I'm really glad to see that those are there. How are they going to be paid for? I'm hoping it's not from the 106 because the public right-of-way is only, well, it says 10, but you've already mentioned it was actually £12,000. And is that index-linked? Are these index-linked figures? We've got a secondary access point, which is going to have a bollard in the road. Who is going to have the authority to raise and lower that bollard? Who is going to physically have the ability to go, an emergency has happened, an emergency vehicle needs to get on site or off site, or even just there's a traffic incident on the road and people can't get to work, can't get to school, so they're going to need to use the other road. And then finally, my standard question with regards to land management companies, which is that this land management company will have carte blanche to raise their prices year on year, and that anyone that lives on this site will not have any ability to change or alter that. And can we please do something about these predatory land management companies that come in and just privatise our parks and open spaces?
Thank you, Councillor London. Back to officers.
Okay, firstly, the query from Councillor Ball regarding the safety audit. Perhaps I can pass to Peter just to explain what's required and why we're sufficiently comfortable that that's achievable.
Councillor Glossop, we have assessed the application. In our view, what's being proposed is acceptable in highway safety terms. The Section 278 process is the legal process the applicant enters into to get agreement with the Highway Authority for the specifications of what is going to be delivered. And that process does require a road safety assessment to be submitted. So that's when we would expect the road safety, the first stage of the road safety audit to be submitted to us. We require that road safety audit to assess the details of what is being provided or being proposed. But the principle of what is being proposed, we are satisfied it is acceptable in highway safety terms. Now, you may say, well, that should be done earlier, but that's the process for the Section 278 is that it is submitted with a road safety audit. That's when we'll get it.
So, if you didn't agree with that road safety audit when you get it, what happens?
Well, at that point, the reasons would be assessed and then the scheme would be mitigated to deal with those deficiencies. But that's not, if we were to say to you, when the road safety audit is going to come in, we think there are going to be insurmountable problems, then I wouldn't be able to write a report to the planning officer to say that in principle the development is acceptable. So I don't think there are going to be issues that are identified by the road safety audit which are not going to be mitigated.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor London remains concerned. It would be fair to say that turning out of Rose and Crown Court and how safe that will be, particularly turning right. Did you want to add anything to that, Peter?
I think the thing to add to that is that those dwellings are already there. Those movements that you're talking about and are concerning you are occurring, and they're occurring at the moment with the carriageway aligned as it is. So what's going to go in as a result of the development that's in front of us is that there's going to be a right turn lane for those residents, which is also going to provide them some additional space to wait if they're making the manoeuvre out. The flow of the junction is going to be interrupted by the traffic signals, which I think will be of assistance to them. So I think for the residents of those dwellings that you're talking about, the situation is an improvement.
May I ask a clarification question? May I ask a clarification question? So, when those residents come out, there is going to be a dedicated lane for them on the other side of the road? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, can we provide, have we got another drawing that just shows that area? I think one was shown earlier in the presentation. Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry.
Was there another highways plan that showed the Rose and Crown Junction?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what's being proposed by the developer in the vicinity of the Rose and Crown Junction. So that central lane going in is to facilitate the right turn in. And that lane will assist for the left turn out movement, which is the one I think, Councillor, that you're really concerned about.
Right, not left. Coming out and turning right.
Down south, down the A143. Yeah, that I think that movement will be made easier and safer by the works that are being proposed.
Okay, so just to clarify, there will be a space for those residents from Rose and Crown Court to turn right that will not be blocked by oncoming traffic that's already on the road. They'll have their own special lane. Is that what you're saying?
Could you say that question again? Sorry.
So, As a result, the main difference between what they are currently experiencing and what they will experience now is that traffic will be stopped at the red light of this junction about where that is.
Yeah.
So if more than 2 cars are stopped at that traffic light, the Rose and Crown Court people coming out cross one carriageway, and then where does their car go when there are cars stopped on the 143?
Yeah. That, I think, is a fair comment. And I think that could be mitigated by some yellow hatch box to provide an area for at least one vehicle to be able to have some clear space.
Thank you very much. Could we do that, please?
That's the sort of matter that I think could be addressed in the section 278.
Cool. Can we include wording to allow that, please? Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor London.
Thank you, Peter. So just going back to Councillor London's queries, on condition 33, the amended wording, I would suggest no dwelling shall be occupied until the carriageways and footways serving that dwelling have been, including their connection to the existing network, have been constructed to at least binder course level or better in accordance with the approved details, except with the written agreement of the LPA. Good, thank you. Condition 23. Your question was around who pays for the accesses.
Yes, I was just checking how that is going to be paid for, especially as it's going to include off-site, because these are connections to off-site, there will be off-site works involved. So therefore, it's obviously not going to be paid for as part of the on-site open space contribution. So I was wondering, is that where this public rights of way 10,500 comes in, and it's now 12,000, and a concern that 4 different access points, 12,000, it's going to cost more than that.
So the sum of money in the section 106 for the public rights of way is the connection from the southwest corner down to the existing bridleway. That's the only off-site new footpath connection that is proposed as part of this development.
Sorry to push back, but on condition 23, and I will read it out now for absolute clarity's sake, talks about access points to the recreation ground to the northwest corner, southwest corner onto the new footpath connection, southeast of Monterbury Lane. So a developer cannot do things outside of their red line boundary. Access to the recreation ground to the north is going to require works that are technically outside of that red line boundary. So I want to be really, really clear exactly how that is going to get paid for.
I'm not entirely comfortable with talking about finance when we're debating that. I think...
As in, I want to make sure that this is included in the 106.
Right.
Or if it's not included in the 106, where as a, the finances of how something is going to come about, I think is very much a material consideration.
Yeah. So we can clarify that.
Okay. Penny's just whispered she can clarify it. So.
The connection to the southwest that Sarah just explained includes order making and the creation of a new footpath over third-party land, which is why we required the Section 106 contribution. The connectivity to the recreation ground to the north is more about ensuring that development does not turn its back on it, and it just facilitates a point at which people can move from one bit of open space to another. So I don't think you would require, we're expecting them to then build a further path across the recreation ground. It's just to ensure that you wouldn't stick a fence up. There will be a point of connection. Similarly, the connection, the other one that is proposed, which I think is down to... Yeah.
There's one down here.
That again, it's connecting into a point on the quiet lane, which is highway land. So that would be something that we wouldn't need a further contribution for that. The contribution is just needed where we were on that third party land where there was a physical path that was being asked for, but that's not what was being asked for in relation to the northern point, although those details will come forward in reserve matters when we will see the final layout of the development. That was it. That was it. And just in relation to the management company, there's a wider point there, isn't there? That's not really for us in this committee to answer in terms of how they are dealt with. It's a point for government. They are a management company is something that the system allows to operate, and we would be having the normal legal requirements in terms of making sure that open space is managed appropriately. But your wider point is not really one for today.
Bollard?
Sorry, yes. I don't know, Peter might be able to say a bit further, but the bollard will be locked and the emergency services will have a key that enables them to be accessed. So the only people with authority will be the emergency services. Is there anything you want to add, Peter?
No, the emergency services would physically hold a key for that bollard to be able to raise and lower it. And like you say, it wouldn't be available to other people.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Right, we move on. Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you. Following on from that, if there was a crash outside the main access and people wanted to get to work, even if it was on a bike or whatever, the cars would not be able to go out through that secondary access. Is that correct?
The decision would lay with the emergency services as to whether they thought it was appropriate to open that access point. I think it is an emergency access. We're sort of getting into the technicalities of what and when. That would really be a decision that would sit with those operatives rather than us in terms of when they would choose to be an appropriate time to allow that to be used and for what purpose.
Right. And finally, to get off the roads, and it seems to have been lost along the way, condition 4 on the affordable housing scheme, somebody did bring it up earlier, the affordable housing tenure to be 67% rented, preference to social rent. Can we make that a bit tighter, please, on the number of social rent? I would suggest 100%, but I suppose that would be unreasonable.
So I'm going to do my best to put on my strategic housing sort of housing officer hat here. So there's a difference between social rent and affordable rent. They have set out the mix. That's been advised by our housing officers in terms of what is appropriate. The amount of social rent you get within that affordable rent is dependent on other factors like grant funding. So you wouldn't have a situation where you would require at this stage for 100% of it to be affordable at social rent. It's a sort of different bit of nuance that is dealt with further down the line. This is very much the approach that our housing colleagues have asked for, and then that's a further iteration and discussion that would go on as the site is developed and they look at what registered providers are coming on board and what grant is available for social rent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. Councillor Hood, please.
Thank you. So we still have a proposal for deferment on the table. Some of the issues seem to have been dealt with. I'm still concerned that the Section 106, which I realise isn't set in stone, is inadequate. That's number one. I'm still concerned that those of us who went on the site visit are not convinced that the traffic matters have been properly dealt with. I'm still concerned that as of today, probably all of us on this committee have received a printed representation from Bloor Homes misrepresenting the position of the parish council, which I find quite worrying. And last of all, in relation to, I think it'd be helpful just to clarify. We are aware that the local plan has come out and will be voted on Tuesday. So if the agreement to, not to go for non-determination expires this week or whatever it is, surely we're not thinking if we defer this for a month, to clarify various outstanding matters, including the traffic, that a developer would actually have a successful application for non-determination in light of the meeting on Tuesday.
Actually, this might be a helpful time because you've just clarified. Do you want me to clarify what I've got as your deferral reasons and then answer your last question? So with your further clarification, I had the deferral reasons were to investigate highways impacts following members' concerns relating to impacts on the A143 and specifically the highway safety in relation to the operation of that junction, the clarification on the safe exit from Rose and Crown Court, to review the Section 106 heads of terms and the impacts on infrastructure, particularly in relation to the school and the surgery. In terms of your query about the non-determination thing, it's not an application, so they can just put in an appeal for non-determination once you get past a certain point, and I wasn't looking to imply whether or not I thought that was likely or unlikely. I can't comment on that. It was just procedurally that is an option that is available, because there's no requirements. It's just once you're past the decision date or an agreed extended decision date, that is just something procedurally that is open to them. But again, I couldn't comment as to whether or not what the likelihood of that would be. But if you could confirm whether or not that sort of addressed your deferral reasons, that would be very helpful.
So I guess as the proposer, Councillor Hood. Sorry.
Sarah just reminded me as well, I did miss your point with regards to the publication that was distributed on behalf of Blore. I am comfortable that members had the full details of the parish council comments within their pack, which were set out in detail within Sarah's report, which is, of course, the papers which members would refer to in principle. So I am comfortable that you have seen the full detail of the parish council comments, rather than if you had just seen that excerpt and nothing else, then that may be concerning to me, but I know that members would always refer to their papers as their primary source of information, so I'm comfortable on that point.
Two issues. One is traffic and one is in my view, insufficiency of the Section 106 proposals.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've got here.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Are you comfortable as well, Councillor Bull? Yeah, okay. Just when I was going to put the proposal to the committee, up pops Councillor Dicker. Good afternoon, Councillor Dicker.
There we go. I've gone red. Excellent. I'm feeling rather uncomfortable with this deferment. I don't really understand what we are expecting our highways to go away and do. We've asked them a lot of questions today, quite thoroughly, and I think they've been answered brilliantly with the view of Peter and his team. What are we expecting them to go? To go back over all their work and everything to say, and then when they come back and say, no, we totally sit quite happily with what our advice that we've given this committee. What do we do as a committee? Do we say, yep, okay, fine? Or do we possibly, and have been done before in the old days, of get our own highways engineers to look at the proposals and things like that, which obviously is very costly in that. As I say, I don't really understand what we're asking him to go and do. They've done it and asked lots of questions here, which is fantastic that Peter turns up now several times and is very, very helpful to this committee. So personally, I won't be voting for the deferment because I just think we're going to be repeating and asking them to repeat exactly what they've done already. I may come back with exactly, and I think we'll come back with exactly the same things. I think we'd sort of disagree. I don't quite always understand that this is about highway safety. Now, I would agree, members, I wasn't on the site visit, so I didn't see but I have driven down that road when I was out visiting so many places and I was chairman of the council. So, but I think that's all I'm going to add at the moment. Okay, but I won't be voting for the deferment. I just think it's a total waste of time. I think the highways have done a good job. You guys may not agree with them. I may not agree with them necessarily, but I think they've done as much as they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dicker. Councillor Bull, please.
Just very quickly, I take the point that Councillor Dicker's making, but highways have looked at what the applicant is proposing. And what we're saying is maybe there's a better way of doing it, a different, I don't know, the roundabout or whatever. And they will then come back and highways will look at that. Highways are there to look at what is in front of them, essentially. That's my understanding.
Thank you, Councillor Bull.
Just to add to clarity on that point, in terms of looking for alternatives, members do have to judge what is in front of them as well. So we can't redesign a scheme because we want something else. It was just to add that clarity. We have to look at an application that is before us today. So at the moment, I've got some deferral reasons, but I think if the reason were to be because we want you to consider other things, we do have to make a judgment on what is before us. It might be that you want further information in relation to understanding what is before you or evidencing what is before you. But we do have to judge an application that is presented.
And we are.
Thank you, Penny. I am now going to move to put this proposal for deferral to the committee. So there'll be no further questions unless, of course, the motion fails. So I haven't got all the detail of the amendments to the conditions, but I'll just accept that what we've heard you're comfortable with. Okay. So Councillor Hood proposed deferral for the reasons that Penny has outlined, and that was seconded by Councillor Bull. So if this is successful, it will return to this committee at some future date. Could I see a show of hands in favour of deferral, please? Could I see a show of hands in favour of, sorry, not in favour, against the proposal, please?
So that's 9 votes in favour and 4 votes against. The motion is carried and the application is deferred.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, members.
Can you go to the loo, please?
I can formally declare that there'll be at least a 15-minute break. Yeah.
Rush for the loo.
Okay, members, we're moving on now to agenda item 6, which is Newcroft Chalkston Way, Haverhill. And Amy is the presenting case officer, so over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application relates to the Newcroft site in Haverhill, and the proposal is for an extension to the existing community and clubhouse building. This application is presented to the Planning Committee because the land is owned by West Suffolk. However, it is managed and operated by Haverhill Community Sports Association. So we have the first plan here, which is the location plan, and you see the blue line indicates the wider site area, and the Newcroft site as a whole provides a number of football pitches and event space for use by the community. It has 2 member clubs, Haverhill Rovers Football Club and Haverhill Borough Football Club. So the location plan depicts 2 red lines in this case. The one to the northwest, over here, is the land allocated for the proposed biodiversity net gain, which comprises wildflower grassland on the bund that was created in association with the artificial grass pitch that we saw presented to committee a couple of years ago. The main red line, however, is here and includes the existing access from the highway and the existing community building. So working through the plans, we've got the existing block plan here, which indicates the existing community building. And you can see the dogwood shrub just highlighted here, which is referenced in the officer's report as being a feature which provides some verdant attributes. So this is the proposed block plan with the proposed extension, which I've highlighted in yellow so that it's clear. You can see that it will result in a substantial amount of the dogwood shrubs being removed. So this is the existing elevations, and the bottom image there is the front of the community building, and the proposed extension is on the right-hand side of that. The proposed elevations here, and I've used the yellow line again to highlight the extension elements. So looking at the front of the building, you can see the proposed extension on the right-hand side there. So these are the existing floor plans. So I appreciate a bit too small to see the text, but on the left-hand side of the community building is where you've got the majority of, all the changing rooms and a meeting room as well. And on the right-hand side of the existing building is sort of the social event space and a bar area and servery. This indicates this plan is now the proposed floor plans. Again, I've highlighted on the right-hand side in yellow the proposed extension. As you can see, the changing rooms on the left-hand side has remained, and then the right-hand side, there's an extension to the event space. You can see just where my cursor is now and to the bottom as well. And actually quite a substantial element of the proposal will be occupied by toilets. I've zoomed in a little bit here just to get a better idea of the extended event space and toilet area that is proposed. So moving now on to the photos of the site, and each of the following slides follow the same formula. Basically, we've got the inset plan on the right-hand side with an arrow which indicates the direction from which the photo is taken. So this is the front of the building, and the proposed extension will be to the right-hand side of the community building. This is the side elevation. You can see the football stand and the grass pitch behind to the rear of the community building. And this is the rear of the building. Again, just to flag that the proposed extension is on the end there to the left of this photo. And this is the rear and side of the building, the proposed extension on the left. And the next 2 images are a closer-up image of the elevation that will have the proposed extension. So there's the shrubs there, and then the end elevation. And again, similarly here, just zoomed in onto that side. This depicts the existing access, which won't change as a result of this proposal. And then the final photo shows the bund, which was created in relation to the artificial grass pitch that you can just see on the right-hand side of this photo. And it's proposed to put the biodiversity net gain elements on that bund. In terms of representation, the Town Council supports the proposal, but has, what they state, are serious concerns regarding insufficient parking at the site and are concerned that any additional development will exacerbate the issue. The Town Council has also concerns regarding the existing access being too narrow, which can cause delays on Chalkstone Way. No ward member comments have been received, and there have been no neighbour representations. In relation to consultee responses, Public Health and Housing have no objections, subject to securing appropriate construction hours. And in addition, officers are proposing to add the conditions to limit noise and operation hours to match the conditions attached to the planning permission for the original building. So highways, they have no objection and no conditions have been proposed, although officers propose to add a condition requiring additional cycle parking at the site to try and encourage sustainable modes of travel. And ecology, there's been no objection, subject to concerns to secure biodiversity mitigation and enhancement measures and the BNG proposals for wildflower planting. In terms of the material planning considerations, obviously the principle of development is supported by both local and national policy. The proposed extension would help support the promotion of healthy communities and by providing a social space for existing sports visitors, and will provide additional event space for use by the community. This provision is a significant benefit of the proposal. In terms of impact on character and appearance, as you'll have seen by the plans, it's quite a modest extension, and the design and form and appearance will create an almost seamless addition to the existing building. We've touched on the removal of the shrubs, which is a disadvantage to the proposal because they do provide a verdant and attractive feature to the grey hard standing area to the south of the site. So moving on to highways, for those that recall the previous application, we discussed highways in detail. It was related to that proposal. But in this instance, the proposal will serve existing sports users. And it stated that it will not result in additional parking requirements. And any other community use of the clubhouse would be outside of the peak hours when parking capacity is not an issue. Neighbouring amenity has also been considered. There may be amplified music and speech in the proposed extension as per the existing building. So therefore, as I mentioned previously, the same conditions to limit opening hours or noise level that was attached to the original permission could be attached to this decision. And ecology, following a number of amended biodiversity net gain proposals, they're now considered acceptable in principle, and the biodiversity enhancements can be secured by planning condition. So in conclusion then, looking at the planning balance and the key considerations and the positives and negatives of the proposal, the principle of development is certainly supported. This proposal would support the growth of a highly valued and well-used community resource that supports health and well-being of the community. The character and appearance, the extension is a seamless addition, and residential amenity can be protected by planning condition, and the ecology and highways matters were all considered acceptable. Slight negative, obviously the loss of shrubs, which do provide a verdant feature, but in the planning balance, it's considered that officers have recommended approval, subject to the conditions set out within the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. Members, there are no registered speakers. There's no one present and no one submitted a statement. So we can go straight into the committee debate. I've got, Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you very much. Yep, happy to support this. Glad to see more community space coming to use. It's something that's sadly lacking in Haverhill at a premium. But I just think it's right that bringing attention to the town council's comments and the parking issues that we've had in the past. I just wondered if the officers inquired about the current status of the agreement with Samuel Ward School, because it is an informal agreement, which it says in the report can be revoked. I've heard of posts being erected at St Samuel Ward's, which is blocking access to the parking for the football club. I don't know if the football club have access to that anyway, but again, you've got issues of people parking on verges or whatever. On double yellow lines. So it seems like that parking issues have not been fully resolved. But having said that, those comments are just about getting them to be a good neighbour, as it were. And having said all that, I'm just happy to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Smith. Approval. Now, I've got a list of other members wishing to speak. I'll go to Councillor Marmae White, just in case you are happy to second it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to second it. I've obviously been here too long, and I don't mean today. I mean in general, because I was part of the original decision to build this, and it's a fantastic facility, and it's been so well used. So I'm very happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Marmae White. Councillor Dicker, please.
Thank you. Well, I've used this facility for many years with my sons playing for Newmarket and Mildenhall against Haverhill, and it was always a pleasure to go over there with these fantastic facilities. Although I've got to say that the refereeing was very dodgy for visiting teams, unfortunately. But everywhere's sort of got to understand that that's the way it was in Haverhill when you went there. It's fact. We all said it, all the other teams. Anyway, I've always experienced, I'm not saying poor parking, but parking areas that were incredibly busy. Now, I've read very much with interest the highway matters on that, and again, the highways have said that they don't feel it would increase the added burden. Well, I don't know where any more extra cars ever would go, because I was probably one of those that parked on the verges as well, and things like that. But I'm very happy to obviously be voting for this, and I do hope that, because there will be extra cars around, that it doesn't cause too much issues to the relevant neighbours and everything. It's kind of funny that being a sports place, and nobody wants to go and park in the academy, and that they all seem to want to park on top of the place, and yet they've got sports facilities. But that's the way people are. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Dicker. Councillor Chester, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can't claim to have Councillor Dicker's in-depth knowledge of the facility, but I'm happy to support nonetheless. Thank you.
Or indeed the refereeing standards. Yeah. Councillor Sale, please.
Thank you. I'm very happy to support this proposal. And I'd also like to thank Amy for the very last slide that went on when you put up the positives and the negatives. Now, I know this is probably, compared to the last one, a shorter list, but that is really, really quite useful. Yeah, it really does focus where you put your, your balance. And I think that is fantastic. That would be nice to come out in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. And currently, finally, Councillor London.
I'm definitely in favour of this. One bizarre question, which is, I counted 24 toilets. 25% of the floor space seems to be taken over to facilities, and we're going to be adding 8 more. What on earth do we need 32 toilets for?
I don't know, but I suspect multiple games going on at the same time, to be fair. So, oh yeah. Or as Helen just said, the parent rush at the end of a game. Is there anything to respond to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, there's a couple of things to respond to, but in the absence of any more requests to speak, I'll go straight into the vote.
Oh, there was one question.
No, I said it once, yeah, so please answer.
Thank you. Yeah. So just in relation to Councillor Smith's query about the neighbouring Samuel Ward Academy, which there's a mutual arrangement at the moment between the application site and Samuel Ward are happy for users of Newcroft to use their parking areas outside of school hours. I am not aware of any change to that relationship in any way, or I've not heard personally about issues about the blocking of the access. As far as I'm aware, and from very recent conversations with the applicant, that relationship with Samuel Ward still exists and people are using it. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Right, as promised, we've got a proposal for approval in line with the officer's recommendation for approval by Councillor David Smith, and that's seconded by Councillor Mildmay White. Can I see a show of hands, please, in favour of approval?
Thank you. That appears to be unanimous. Motion's carried and the application approved.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, members. So we swiftly move on now to item 7, and if I could invite the head of growth to take up the position at the speaker's desk, please. And Connor is our presenting case officer. So when you're ready, Connor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application before you is a hybrid planning application with full planning permission sought for an advanced manufacturing and engineering centre.
Sorry, Connor, can I just interrupt? Jim, or Councillor Thorndyke for the record.
I'll accept either title, so I'm not proud. I don't know whether I should be declaring an interest on this because I have been discussing this with the financial side of the thing at Cabinet Planning. So I don't know whether I should declare an interest or not. I haven't been discussing the planning side of it so much as the rest of it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. I think that's useful in the interest of openness and transparency, but provided you've got an open mind, I don't see how that precludes you from taking part.
Thank you, Claire. Continue, Connor. Thank you.
Yes, so the application before you is a hybrid planning application with full planning permission sought for an advanced manufacturing and engineering centre with cafe and conference facility. And then, of course, secondly, outline permission is sought for further manufacturing and engineering units with the means of access to be considered. The application is submitted by West Suffolk Council and, as detailed within the report, represents a technical departure due to its location in land that was designated for the Eastern Relief Road. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions within the report and the signing of the Section 106 agreement stated. Just by way of verbal update, the ward has previously been listed as Morton Hall, which is a technical error, and we have clarified this with our validation officers. And of course, I've discussed this with Councillor Mildmay White and clarified the ward prior to this meeting is Rougham with Rushbrook. Onto the location plan. So you can see the site highlighted there with the drop-down arrow, and then the red line of the site on the right-hand side there. Members will note the Eastern Relief Road to the north of the site, with the wider Suffolk Business Park designation to the southwest. And then Bury St Edmunds settlement boundary and Morton Hall estate itself is just in view to the west there. Moving on to the site plan, there's obviously quite a lot of detail in the site plan, so I've split these into two. So this is the southern part, which primarily highlights the extent of the full planning application. So you can see the white outline central there. It indicates the sort of the layout of the manufacturing units. You can see parking is focused to the west and to the east behind the unit itself. There is a mixture of course, of electric vehicle, powered two-wheeler, disabled parking spaces. There's also, it's just out of shot here, but you've got secure lit and covered cycle storage. The main focal point for pedestrian access would be from the west and then coming east towards what will be the main central hub area. That will be clear on the elevation shortly. But the site will have primarily a single access point, which is highlighted here. And then, of course, traffic will either deviate into the front parking area or travel south, east, and then north into the rear parking area. And then onto the northern part of the site. So again, the greyed out area has got some indicative details which are on the various plans on the website, but this is obviously subject to the outline permission. The landscaping to the north, given visibility, which again will be sort of clear on the photographs, which I'll show shortly, is considered quite an important part and critical part of the consideration for officers moving forward. Again, I've got some landscaping plans which I'll show shortly, but this just gives an indication to the context of the proposal moving forward. You can see the cycle parking coming into view there. You've got breakout areas, some ponds, and then of course some routes for visitors and staff members to utilise. Onto the elevations. So the first, which will be the primary elevation, so looking east into the site where that primary pedestrian access would be located. So you'll see the design has placed an emphasis on this central hub element with the articulated fenestration and glazing, which I'm hopefully highlighting there. The landscaping and pedestrian access has been opened up in these places to allow this to be the focal point moving forward. The building itself is to be constructed at ground floor with grey clay facing brickwork with an element of recessed bricked banding to provide that visual interest via shadow and detailing. The first floor walls are to be constructed with insulated metal cladding panels. Final details will be conditioned, which is in the reports, but otherwise the use is considered to be acceptable. Similarly, moving on to the eastern aspect, so what would be the rear elevation. Again, you can see a focal point it is on the workshop units themselves, which evidently are the more utilitarian element of the proposal moving forward. This element will evidently be less visible from the public realm to the west, but otherwise this just gives an indication as to the layout of the building. And then lastly, the northern and southern elevations. So again, the northern one, which would be most visible from the Eastern Relief Road, and the southern, which is, you're only going to get glimpse views from development to the south. Moving on, excuse me, to the floor plans. So the first being that central hub element. I'm not entirely sure how clear the writing is, but I've tried to zoom in as best as I can, but I'll sort of go through all the different rooms. So you've got the lobby to start with, and then the social hub and cafe element with the kitchen just off. You've got various meeting rooms, admin offices, reception, evidently a stairwell on the northern end of the building, and corridors, and then some mixed cycle changing facilities with WC and shower to enable changing facilities for those that wish to cycle or walk to the units, for example. And then, of course, this shows the wider ground floor plan. So again, the central hub element just on the sort of bottom left of the screen there, and then evidently the various individual workshops throughout the rest of the building. Similarly, with the first floor, you've got various meeting rooms, collaborative spaces for those future tenants for the workshops, WCs and various corridors and administration offices. And then again, the wider first floor plan just showing the mezzanine element of those workshop spaces. Lastly, the roof plan, which shows solar PV panels to be installed with various roof lights and maintenance access. Onto the landscaping plans, again, starting with the south of the site. Now, the full detailed landscaping plans are obviously on the website, and they're quite busy, to put it bluntly. So I'll do my best to just sort of go out over the layout as shown, but it just gives an indication as to the most sensitive areas of the site where the design has influenced the landscaping, boundaries, the elements, which places to focus on. So you've obviously got the sort of southwestern, southern and southeastern boundary where you've got swales and various hedging and trees to be installed. You've got some within the sort of internal of the site. And then again, you've got sort of entrance greens to the western and then following on into to the north of the site. And again, so you can see the focus on the depth and the density of the landscaping on the northern boundary. There are some passageways that will be left to allow for pedestrian access to what will be coming forward as part of the outline application, and then any future reserve matters applications to allow that fluidity of pedestrian movement into and out of the site. The first of the photographs now, the site is vacant, so there's not much to show as such. However, the first picture here is taken just off to the east of the roundabout, looking northeast. So you can see the existing sort of boundary features of the site, some of the existing units in the background there, and then the Eastern Relief Road is just off to the left. Again, looking southeast with more of those units within Suffolk Business Park coming into view. Now looking west from that roundabout. And I've provided a few wider street view images. Again, this one from Rougham Tower Avenue, just to give, again, just sort of more context of how the building will sit within existing development. And then again, lastly, from Fredcastle Way itself, you can see the existing access which will be used as part of the development coming forward. Onto the consultee comments. A summary of all the consultees and their comments can be seen on page, I think it's 98 of your reports packs. But essentially no objections have been raised, with no comments received from any members of the public. Rougham Parish Council have stated their support, but do have queries regarding access and parking provision. Now, the deficit in the parking provision is discussed within the report. However, given calculations within floor space that include, in short, a lot of corridor space, the deficit, which I think is about 10 car parking spaces, is considered to be acceptable in the circumstances. And there are no objections from Highway Authority or National Highways on those grounds. The LPA deem it necessary to propose a condition that requires the applicant to provide further access details, primarily by way of gates and or crossings, Again, in discussions with the Highway Authority to enable safe travel for those users, even if passing the site on the western boundary, for example. However, the access otherwise, with manoeuvring into and out of the site for deliveries, refuse vehicles, is otherwise considered acceptable. But as per the conditions, a deliveries management plan has also been recommended and imposed. Councillor Major has provided some comments fairly recently. I think this was this week, maybe at the end of last week, which are obviously in front of you now. The query raised regarding the use of the parking has been passed on to the applicant, but at present the parking will be solely for staff and visitors of the units themselves. But again, as for the reasons stated, no adverse impacts are considered to arise in relation to parking and/or highway safety. Going on to the officer comment, so the application site lies within Suffolk Business Park and is an allocated employment site under policy BV13, which sets out the acceptable uses, previously B1, which is now EG, and B8, EG being the uses that are being applied for. As I've stated, there are no objections from consultees, so it's not considered that there would be any adverse impacts associated with the developments moving forward, that being the full and the outline. Again, whilst technically the application proposes conflict with the adopted local plan, again with that designation for the Eastern Relief Road, this is largely, of course, a technical conflict now, given the Eastern Relief Road has come forward. The application proposes a use compatible with BV13 and emerging AP12. Which is the Suffolk Business Park allocation, and having regard to all the relevant material planning considerations, the proposal is considered to be acceptable subject to those conditions and the 106 agreement. Just lastly, there is a slight update to condition 15, which I think is on page 119. So previously the condition required the post-verification noise impact assessment to be completed with all units being operational. However, noting that the timescale for tenants to occupy these units isn't known, and in discussion with the LPA's environmental health officer, the condition has been amended to allow for the plant to design to be completed and therefore the cumulative rating to be considered, as opposed to it being after all the units are occupied. But that's my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Colin. And we're delighted to be joined by, well, you may not be delighted, but we are. It's not often we see officers presenting to the committee, but Andrew Mailer, who is, those of you who may know, is the head of growth for West Suffolk. So Andrew, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for allowing me to address you today. As the Chair's just said, I am Andrea Maley. I am the head of growth for West Suffolk Council, and I'm the project lead for this very exciting project. So I'm really pleased to be here today after all these years of hard work, supported by our excellent technical team, design team, Hethel Innovation, Suffolk County Council, Suffolk Business Board, and of course, officers and members of West Suffolk Council. As has been said already, this is a policy compliance scheme. It's been carefully designed to assimilate well into the landscape. It does have ample parking provision for the operation that we require, and most importantly, it will be a BREEAM excellent scheme that I think we can all point to as an example of how you can develop buildings such as this with so many sustainable features. So we're very proud of that as well. So the Advanced Manufacturing and Engineering Centre is West Suffolk Council's flagship investment designed to power the future of our local economy. It's the kind of thing that wouldn't happen if it wasn't for West Suffolk Council. The commercial developers do not build innovation centres like this. They need public investment. Commercial developers prefer to build larger sheds where they get more profit, etc. So it's something where, if you like, the market has failed and West Suffolk Council is stepping in to make the most of it. It's a purpose-built facility, and we've been advised by Hethel Innovation in its design to make sure it's fit for purpose. And it will be for high potential manufacturing startup companies. It will deliver research and development, skills development, and the creation of higher value jobs, which in an area of low wage economy and rising house prices is essential really for our populations. So it builds on the progress we've already made as a council. We've invested in the Eastern Relief Road, Ruffham Tower Avenue. We've invested in Suffolk Business Park. We also have West Suffolk Manufacturing Group, where we invest in our ever-growing, if you like, advanced manufacturing and engineering sector. And the timing is also really good in that the government has just announced its industrial strategy, and it's putting £4.3 billion into this sector, as it sees this sector as being the future growth, one of the future sectors that will power UK economy going forward. So we're very excited about that. At the same time, West Suffolk College has been awarded £550,000 by the Gene Haas Foundation to develop its training centre for advanced manufacturing and engineering just across the road from us as well. So the timing's rather good in that those young people will be being trained in that sector and will be looking for somewhere to start their businesses in an incredibly well-supported environment.
Andrea.
We're up, are we? Yeah. That's it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for coming. Right. Councillor Marmay White, did you want to begin?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yep.
And thank you, Connor, for that presentation and for telephoning me to explain the mistake about the ward. This is the third time that I've been demoted from Ruffham and Rushbrook to Great Barton on one occasion, Morton Hall a couple of months ago, and now this one. So I hope this third time. I know Morton Hall want to annex this area of Ruffham and Rushbrook, but we're hanging on in there, and I'm determined that it'll outlast me. So it's a very important area. You know, the village does have very emotional connections to Ruffham Tower Avenue and Ruffham Airfield and the Tower Association, etc. So that's just by way of background. But what I would just like to read out is the Ruffham Parish Council comments, which were written up by our Vice Chairman with the support of other members of the Parish Council. So whilst we welcome the proposal, we note the following. The cycle route needs to continue to the south, or safe access to the carriageway is required. Now, the reason for this is that we've been left in limbo a bit in this area, in that the National Cycleway comes from Stowmarket, in fact, and I don't know where beyond that, all the way to Bury. And it runs partly along the railway line through Thurston, then comes down towards Mount Road. And at that point, at the top of Sow Lane, I don't know if you've quite got that on your map, poor cyclists have to cross, which is now a very busy road, Mount Road, and get on to the area of cycleway that runs along a bit of Ruffham and Rushbrook and then into Morton Hall and Bury. And then we lose that link coming south to this particular corner of this development. Beyond that, you can cycle back down to Ruffham and Rushbrook. So we're missing that vital link that people coming from Thurston, who I hope, it's only 2 miles away, they're easily able to cycle here. But they have to negotiate that little bit at the top of Mount Road to cross, and then down this little bit of Sow Lane. And this road, like we've heard before, all roads are just getting busier and busier. So that's something that we are looking, probably when the next development on Ruffham Airfield comes forward, that we would make that link. But Parish Council are very keen just to bring up the fact that we haven't really flagged up cycling to this particular unit. And it is very achievable, either from Bury coming down that proper cycleway at the top of Mount Road, or from Thurston, as I've said, which is just 2 miles away, and from Ruffham to the south. So I think we should have flagged up the cycling aspect of getting to this unit first. They then had a question mark about the positioning of the building with the split parking that requires drivers to make a decision close to the access, which could cause queuing onto the highway. The large access doors to the rear of the building don't align with the access parking arrangement. and delivery vehicles will have to manoeuvre amongst parked vehicles to unload. They felt a better arrangement would be to segregate parking and deliveries. They did mention the inadequate parking provision, but we've heard already that that has been addressed, really. And they were questioning whether phase 2 of the land could be used for extra parking. But, you know, that will come forward in due course. So that was the comments from Parish Council. From myself as District Council, I'm delighted to see a variation of innovation for businesses coming forward, because sadly we've seen an awful lot of what I call distribution warehouses, and they don't even have solar panels on them, which is even more irritating. So we're getting a good mix. We've got Green King up there. We've got, as we know, Treat moved up there. But then we got this raft of distribution centres, which are just huge sheds. And as you said before, as Connor's mentioned, or as Andrea mentioned, they tend to be low-wage jobs. And the whole ethos of the business park was to bring in some more high-paying jobs to encourage people who have, you know, followed their hearts and taken up higher education to come back and start businesses here. So I'm very much in favour of this, as you've heard, but I'm very happy to listen to, well, I want to listen to other people's comments about this. But from the point of view of our ethos of the business park, which I was part of years ago, this very much fulfills that criteria. And, you know, the Relief Road was built particularly to take the traffic. And if you come off at junction 45 off the A14, this is exactly where you'd like to be. So from that point of view, I'm not convinced about Morton Hall, because why would you queue up at Sainsbury's and come all the way down these roads to get to this area when you can nip off the junction 45 and be straight up to this proposed building? So whether we make a condition that we say construction traffic has to use junction 45, which is what Green King have agreed, that might make residents of Morton Hall happy. But from the point of view of Rougham residents, you know, we're very accepting of the fact, albeit maybe reluctantly, that we've now got McDonald's, and junction 45 is getting quite busy, but that's what it was built for. So thank you, councillors, for listening to my ramblings. I look forward to hearing further discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Mulway-White. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, Councillor Mulway-White, you mentioned some of the things with regards to cycling that I was going to. Would it be possible to just pull up the slide showing the plans and parking for the cycle parking and the footpaths around? So, and just to confirm, where is the parking for cycling?
So annoyingly, the plan here is sort of chopped it off, but the cycle parking is located to the north here, just offside. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it clear on this one here. So cycle parking is located here. So obviously any users could come south or cross, you know, the various points at the roundabout. You would come in through the different points noted here, coming in towards the central hub, and then taking off to the north.
Fantastic. That's just what I wanted to confirm, that was a cycle entrance path with a proper surface, because you mentioned that some of the other ones were just going to be grass surface. So I was just checking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Connor, and Andrew. You're obviously very passionate about this and could speak all day. Sorry, Andrew, cut you off, but never mind. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic project, you know, and it's vital for the future growth and benefit of all of West Suffolk. We will all benefit from this, no matter what part of the district we come from. And I'll be happy to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Smith. Again, looking at my list, Councillor Glossop, would you like to second? Yep.
Do you want me to speak?
Please. Yep.
This has been on the cards for
Oh.
I do. Oh,
You're okay now. You're okay now. You began, and we couldn't hear you clearly, but
Okay, I'll start again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do second this. This has been on the cards for so long and it's needed so much for our advanced manufacturing and engineering, and small units are required for the people who are going to be setting up business. So I'm awfully pleased to see this on the Suffolk Business Park. As Councillor Mildmay White said, we've got a lot of big sheds, and so this is very much required. So yes, I'm happy to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. There's no other members indicating they wish to speak. Connie, you got some responses? Thank you.
Yeah, just some responses to Councillor Mildmay White. The links for the cyclists, obviously not just for this development, but any future development coming forward is noted and is something that, within the wider context, we are looking to resolve for schemes moving forward. We're liaising with Suffolk Highways on those matters as well, because it goes to the core of, the Suffolk Business Park within those allocations. We do have a deliveries and management plan condition, and then of course the access condition, which looks to, have the finer details for crossing points for pedestrians and cyclists alike. So that is, in one way to sort of control, traffic and, any users moving forward. I thought I had added a construction method statement condition, but I can't see one, but that's something we can add for the full and the outline planning permission, as a standard condition we can look to include as well. I think they were the only points or questions raised. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm just looking. Still, Councillor Glossop, your microphone's still on. Thank you very much indeed. Trust me, I have been tested today, as has the committee. Right, there's no other members wishing to contribute to the debate. Sorry, Penny, you...
Just wanted to note, just for clarity with the recommendation, so that is subject to that amended condition that Connor showed on your slide, but also further to that it would be subject to additional conditions, our standard ones relating to construction method statements for both the outline and the hybrid. So that would be part of the recommendation today.
Thank you, Penny. In that case then, swiftly on, it's been proposed for approval in line with the officer's recommendation by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Glossop. Could I see a show of hands in favour, please?
So that appears to be unanimous. Motion is carried and the application approved.
I think, Andrew, there was a sigh of relief then, I think, after all years of work. Thank you. Right, Bailey, did you want... Sorry? Oh, sorry, Jim. Take care, Jim.
Connor just needs to change his presentation. And then Bailey.
Yeah, okay. Yes. It's okay, Bailey. We're not ogres. Just, well, I can't speak for one or two of the committee, but we're, Okay, when you're ready then, Connor, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application before you is a variation of condition application, which simply seeks to remove condition 3 of that previous permission that's referenced on your screen there, which outlines the timescales for the installation and subsequent removal of the battery container, foundations and fencing, which is situated within West Suffolk Car Park. The application is submitted on behalf of West Suffolk Council, hence why it's before you today, and the application is recommended for approval. So site location and context plans, I'm sure everyone will be aware of the sites, but just for the benefit here, the battery container is situated within the car park in front of West Suffolk House, indicated by the red line central of your screen there. Just a close-up of the site plan. This is as previously submitted. No changes are proposed to the layout. Onto the elevations, so you can see the container is evidently on top of concrete foundations with fencing in between. Onto the site photographs. So the first one was taken for the previous committee meeting, I think in 2021. So the two hornbeam trees which are referenced within the report of note, and then the loss of 6 car parking spaces. And then, of course, up-to-date picture of the container in situ. So again, it would be the loss of those 6 car parking spaces, and the trees there are to be retained. I'll just cycle through these. They're largely the same, but it just gives context with the parking. And then again, the last photograph in context with those 2 trees nearby. Again, informal comments have been received from the LPA's arboricultural officer. I think these are on pages 141 to 142. In short, whilst the arrangement is suboptimal and the trees will require more frequent pruning, the trees' form and young age relatively means that they would be more tolerant of the pruning, and no objections are raised to the retention of the container on a more permanent basis. Onto officer comment. It's previously noted that temporary siting of the container was considered to be acceptable by the LPA as opposed to a more permanent siting due to the modest harm identified with the installation of what is a utilitarian structure. Officers, of course, acknowledge that harm and the impact on the character and appearance of the area, as well as the loss of those car parking spaces, which evidently weighs against the proposal. However, the container has remained in situ for almost 4 years with no adverse impacts on the surrounding landscaping, nor upon car parking as a result. The container also provides notable benefits in relation to the provision of an energy capture system to store energy generated by the solar panels at West Suffolk House, and which is not otherwise able to be immediately used, which weighs in favour of the proposal. So, reflecting carefully, it is obviously a balance. Officers are of the opinion that the benefits of retaining the container in as a more permanent addition outweigh the harm, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. I'll just leave this slide up here, which again is a planning balance, just highlighting the factors in favour of the proposal and those against. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. And again, we welcome West Suffolk, a senior energy and a sustainability officer in Bailey. Welcome, Bailey. It's always good to see you. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee in terms of your support, I'm presuming, for the application. So over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bailey Waldridge, and I am a Senior Energy and Sustainability Officer here at West Suffolk Council. I acknowledge that the planning permission for the battery container was awarded on a temporary basis, with the intention for the battery container to be moved to the Council's new Western Way development by the 8th of October 2025. The Council's plans for the Western Way development have changed significantly, meaning the battery container is no longer required as part of this development. The battery container will therefore deliver the most value by remaining in situ at West Suffolk House, where the carbon savings and financial benefits can continue to be delivered. The battery provides electrical supply resilience by providing uninterrupted electricity supply to West Suffolk House in the event of a power cut or stresses on the national electricity grid. This enables West Suffolk House to be used as a hub for emergency response coordination. And in addition, the Council is remunerated for the battery's contribution to supporting the national grid during these periods of stress. The battery also facilitates more local renewable energy systems to connect into the grid through its capability to store excess electricity generation. Therefore, battery systems such as this one will play an important role in the future stability of the grid and will heavily support the net zero ambitions of West Suffolk Council and the Suffolk Climate Change Partnership through its alignment with West Suffolk Council's environmental policy statement and the Suffolk Climate Emergency Plan, respectively. In the 2024-25 financial year, the battery kicked in to provide electricity to West Suffolk House approximately 7 times, preventing disruption to crucial services. The battery also receives annual carbon savings of an estimated 9 tonnes. To conclude, it is felt that the contribution the battery makes to the transition to net zero outweighs the minor visual harm created by the container. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. It's very clear. Committee, comments? Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we accept this as and pass this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor David Smith, you were next in the queue. Did you want a second?
Yeah, happy to second. Just one thing, can we give it a paint job? Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And that's ended the queue of members wishing to contribute. So can we take on board the comments about giving it a paint job? Thank you, Colin. On that basis, still no final, we have reached 0 requests, so let's go and say Councillor Whittam proposed approval in line with the officer's recommendations. It was seconded by Councillor David Smith. Can I see a show of hands in favour?
Right, so that appears to be unanimous. Motion is carried and the application approved.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Bailey. Just before we depart, members, I've just got a reminder that our next training session, and some are in need of training, and I don't mean that of you, it's your training record as opposed to you as individuals, is 10 a.m. on the 23rd of July, which is going to be on Teams.
Yes, and the topic's enforcement.
And the topic is enforcement. And we're going to try a solely Teams training session rather than hybrid.